on the boat. That's part of the secret.
It was super windy on Saturday.
Yeah, windy, right?
It gave me
Let's
the Diana
go.
Ross effect. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Lakeisha,
Nice.
can I quickly say that I absolutely love your voice.
Oh, thank you.
That's so
Absolutely love it.
sweet, DJ.
This is DJ Teflon, and Lakeisha completes him.
Tyler, can you let
You're
Lakeisha talk
nuts.
for the whole show?
Oh my goodness. Now I'm going to not say anything. Thank you so much, DJ Teflon.
I'm so
Okay,
sorry.
you know what, DJ, you and Lakeisha can open your private room.
Daryl!
Ooh,
Top of the hour, Tyler.
something
We got our
cooking.
second. Where's this is?
The after party room.
Snubbed.
But you see,
We've already.
One
Hey,
person.
for those who don't know, we've already Tech News Around the World already has one wedding under our belt
That's
with our friend
Akil.
Akil.
This
I
is
thought
the
about
true
him
purpose
yesterday.
of this group.
but you see how the language evolves. Before you would have said, you have beautiful eyes. Now you can say you have beautiful
Oh,
voice.
great point. Great
Yes.
point.
Oh my God, are
Lovely
you guys
voice.
becoming a dating channel
This is
now?
so embarrassing. Where's the
It's just
effort,
natural
Tyler?
progression, Messi. We're not forcing
Lakeisha,
it. It's just
They can't
sorry
see you
for putting you on
moving.
the spot. I apologize.
No. I know that you are coming from a sweet place. It's
DJ
just
to
the
the
other.
rescue.
Yeah, the other, yeah. Nuts in the peanut gallery up
Okay,
here.
we can hear she's shy now. Quite shy now.
We got. I can't wait for the Indian wedding photos for
Yeah.
Akil.
Are you
Okay.
sure you're not there to attend? I thought you're going to India soon, Tyler.
I know, and I might be there in December. I got to find out when his wedding is and find out where it is. I might be there in time for that.
You can coincide.
Yeah, that would be
Then you
Oh
can
fantastic.
do the
wow,
Bollywood
welcome
live
dance.
to
stream,
India.
live stream.
I want to ride the elephant at the wedding.
Hey,
Tyler,
Tyler,
being the leader on the Jeopardy thing, can I get invited on the wedding then?
I
Is
assume.
that my reward?
I think I get part of the dowry. In fact, I think there's a 10% commission.
hey
Perfect.
Tyler,
Yes.
do you guys ever do corporate retreats at Coconut Beach?
Yeah.
Oh,
Could do.
of course.
Matter of fact,
I
I've
know
had a
where we're
couple
going.
weddings at my resort. I've had two.
You
We're
know
trying
what?
I'm trying to get my whole team and our families
Yeah,
together.
you
to
could
meet
you could
for
do
the
that.
first time.
But check out the two
Yeah.
weddings that I had. One was a local guy, Thai guy, with an his wife was from Australia, and my place is his favorite place in this part of Thailand, and I was very flattered that he wanted to have their honeymoon night in my beach house, and I was
Which
like,
is magical.
yeah, I thought that was very flattering, so I said, sure, we could do that. And then the other wedding was a German couple, and they were in their like late 40s, early 50s, and it was really bizarre. They were right out in front, and Lakeisha knows where they would do that, right out in front near the swing, and a freak. They built like, what do you call it? It's like not an altar, but some kind of structure where you do your vows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
The ark.
yeah, like an ark, yeah. And a freak wave came up and just drowned everybody, and not I mean, it only got like knee high, but this freak wave came up and just knee high water came over the whole ceremony, and then Lakeisha knows I have a dog, and there's other dogs at the other end of the beach, and all of a sudden the other dog at the other end of the beach comes over, and then my dog starts fucking the other dog inside the arch while they're having their wedding vows.
I think someone threw some voodoo on them.
They thought it's
Are
for
they still
them.
married?
Did you charge them extra?
No, but I
The
did.
wedding is for them.
I'm watching from
Hilarious.
the restaurant, like kind of, and I couldn't stop laughing for the whole day. I was just like, oh my god, they're in the
Then
middle of your
do you
vows.
get out of that? How many puppies do you get out of that session?
None.
Was this spooky?
Yes.
He's a big dog. He's a big puppy.
His dog was the giver.
Yeah. So anyway,
Okay.
wow.
I felt I
Hey.
just
So So I have to say that Clubhouse has been an amazing experience. So this afternoon in Addis, actually, I'm meeting a very good friend from Ghana. I met in Clubhouse. So,
Ooh.
I couldn't believe that. So we met in the Africa, Good Morning Africa room and stuff. And then she's celebrating her birthday and coming to Ethiopia. So yeah,
Oh,
I'm looking
lovely.
forward to that. Isn't that sweet and amazing?
very nice.
Yeah, Messi, we had also JP Dalman stayed over at my place about 2 weeks ago. He was traveling
Oh.
here, said come on over. So that's another result of Clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
nice.
amazing. Yeah.
And pin that. Okay, so
But we're
Okay.
going back,
I've.
Tyler. But going back to saying nice comments, you can say now. Okay, we learned now. You can say, "I love your voice." You might also, rather than saying, "Honey, you have a great dress today," you say, "I love your PTR today."
yeah,
That's so the
Ooh.
two possibilities you
Clubhouse
have.
compliments. Yes.
Florian, you're the man. You're the man.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's do this. So we've got
Yes. Let's do
news to
this.
do, and that's what we do here. We specifically cover tech news. And Maria, who joins us from Berlin, sent me a DM of a publication called Obvious Headlines, and they pride themselves on sharing the most obvious headlines, and they're breaking this huge story that a corporation prioritizes profits over people. And there's a photo of Mark Zuckerberg, giant company accused of doing regular ass giant company shit. Is the headline. It's I'll send the photo to the Twitter account. It's very funny. So let's get in.
Maybe also
Yes.
Tyler,
No?
also just what happened over the weekend is that when this whole circus and party in Berlin happening around the opening of the Gigafactory from
Yeah.
Tesla, that was
Mm-hmm.
also a very special event in
Mm-hmm.
a country where cars is a big topic,
Yeah.
especially producing,
The biggest topic.
a non-German car, electric car,
Yeah.
shoveling everything up. Who came in basically saying, "Come on, guys, here's 12,000 employees. We need 12,000 people here to join us." Uh, and even Ilan had had his speech being done partly in German, which was also amazing.
Yeah. And
Tyler, just
Messi.
for a second, my husband and I were talking yesterday, watching CNN about prioritizing profit for business,
Yeah.
like what you were saying,
Yeah.
that's what every business does.
Yes.
And then we said, that means we need to exclude some businesses for being for profit. Like, for example, in the US, the prison system was for profit.
That's right.
And then the corruption ended up being like judges and lawyers being
Great point.
corrupted because they were prioritizing profit by keeping people who are not deserving to stay in prison.
Right.
Or the health system in the US, where they have incentive to keep you sick.
Right.
And the insurance. So how do we do this? If companies by nature prioritize profit, do we exclude some sectors from completely being not for profit so that these types of things don't happen?
Yeah.
So
I have an answer.
yes.
Scandinavia. They seem to have figured these things out. They seem to be doing pretty well with things. But people hate when Americans, half of Americans hate when you do that. And they're like, no, that'll never work over here. No, that'll never work. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I just want to make a quick point because I remember the development of private prisons in this country. It was actually only as recent as like the 1990s, and most of the prisons are not private, and the private prisons actually had issues because of all the issues that you guys just mentioned, which is that there's a conflict in between profit and doing the public's work. I actually refused to ever buy into them when I was offered, when I was an institutional investor, because I was concerned that they would just maybe let prisoners escape because they don't want to spend money on security because they're trying to increase profits or something. So it is really a bad mismatch. But most prisons in the United States are not private. I don't know where that came from. It's not the first time I've heard that statement, but it's not true.
Yeah,
I
but
watched.
it's still a sizable amount. But what's really bad about the private
Shrinking very
prisons?
rapidly because they haven't done
Yeah,
well.
Hold on a
I
second.
watched a
What's
Netflix series. It's
Wait,
actually
wait, wait.
about some juvenile
Cheryl, he
court.
was making. I don't think he had finished the point. Robert, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Robert.
Yeah, thank you. The point that I wanted to make is that the state governments and counties, when they're negotiating with these corporations, the guarantees that are slipped into these contracts are horrible. And they're capacity guarantees. And you could say it motivates some people to keep the prisons full, but you as well. But it really is the thing that it is horrible negotiation at the state level, so everybody loses, whether it's the citizens on taxes or whatever. So it's a bad thing, but it's still capitalism.
Thank you, Robert. I think I watched a Netflix series regarding, I think, young people who are actually sentenced to either the juvenile detention center or prison for very trivial crime. So I think that is actually a very serious thing because, when they are young, if you put them in this kind of places, it will actually affect their whole life. And I think in the series it actually say that those detention center are privately owned, so they actually do it because of revenue, which is quite sad.
Okay. Well, a couple quick announcements before we jump into all the headlines. And welcome back, everybody. And happy Tuesday, October 12th. We had, I don't know, 12 hours ago. Cheryl, who proposed the room Bitcoin versus Ethereum?
Oh, I set it up and invited the
Yeah,
people.
who came up with that concept, that idea of like Bitcoin versus Ethereum?
Watashi.
You did. Wow. So that was brilliant. What a brilliant concept of like two cryptos versus each other. And
No, because I wanted to listen to both sides of a story, but Ben have not been able to set it up. So I just thought, okay, if he's not going to do it, I do it. So I can
great.
set it
And
up.
then that room got over to, over 600 people, 630 or 40 as I saw. And what a fantastic exchange that was. I learned a lot in that room.
Yeah, but thanks to Nicholas. Nicholas was there, and
Yes.
then he was able to navigate them to focus on because I wanted them to talk about technology and not so
Yes.
much of the monetary crap.
Yes.
But they they have this tendency to move to that direction. But Nicholas was able to navigate
Keep
them
them on
back
track.
to
Yeah.
yeah, correct. So
Yeah, that
thanks
was
to
great.
him.
That was a lot of fun. And I love that concept. You could have other cryptocurrencies versus each other, Cardano versus Solana or whatever. That could get very interesting and learn a lot in the process.
The Chinese ones versus Bitcoin, just to compare.
Oh, the central bank digital
I think
currency. Yeah.
I think Tech News should just do a Rumble series in general.
That's fun. That could be
No,
really
but
good. Yeah.
I
Different,
have a
other than
lesson learned.
cryptos. Yeah.
I have a lesson learned from yesterday. I shouldn't have given Ben the green bean.
I thought it was
Because
fine.
he was I know, but he was inviting too many powerful Bitcoin people up, and then we don't have enough Ethereum.
Oh, it got a
And at the
little too
beginning,
lopsided. Yeah.
yeah, too lopsided. And then Alexandra was kind of like, they were a bit rude to her, which I feel really bad about it.
Yeah.
So I had to, tame her after that. But it's okay. I know it now.
Yeah.
Tyler, it was like I don't know if you listened to the whole thing, but I the part I listened to, I thought it was like a wrestling match, and you should sell tickets. I mean, it was actually no, it got down to like being like some of these rooms that are like vax versus anti-vax or something like that. It got pretty. How would you say, Charlie? It got pretty heated with Alexandra and the Bitcoin people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could do the Rumble series. So if somebody gets an
Well,
idea,
as you've
Let's do
seen,
it,
this
Tyler.
room
I
has
think you
been the
would be
most
the
popular.
A friend of mine was I missed the entire thing. I was slammed with meetings, but someone kept on texting me like, "You got to get in this room. You got to get in this room." And like Tyler's like, he came in a little late, but he's like the best moderator for this because
I just
he can keep
invited up
two
that.
different sides like in their corners.
Yeah, I invited up the Ethereum developer guy from Belgium.
Yes.
Yeah, William.
Marius.
Yes, Marius.
Marius. Yeah. Yeah. He
And
actually DM'd me. And I didn't saw the DM. He wanted to come up.
yeah,
But I was trying to protect him because he's a minority there, right? So I
yeah,
always try to
yeah.
keep
But
his
he's a
space
smart
to talk
dude.
because he's a
Okay,
very smart dude, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we'll look forward to if anyone has ideas for X versus Y kind of rumbles, we could host those. That could be a lot of fun. And then all the better. I mean, I'm not pro Bitcoin or Ethereum one way. Most of the people in this room are
Yes.
not one way or the other. But we can employ our our
Yeah.
community to
What
Please,
would the
no
balance
vaccine
be?
one. No vaccine
Must
one,
be tech.
please.
Must
So
be tech.
yeah, thanks to Tyler. That's the reason why I dare to do it on Tech News, because it's a neutral platform.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do the news as we always do. The top story of today is from Axios. And it says that the Facebook whistleblower Francis Hogan accepts an invitation to brief Facebook's oversight board. Oh boy. Oh, this is getting interesting. Which she claims Facebook has lied to repeatedly. Oh, snap. Oh. So Facebook created an oversight board to as a body to make the tough decisions about topics like should President Trump be allowed on Facebook, because Facebook itself figures, you know what, maybe better that we don't make that decision. Maybe we have internal biases or whatnot. Let's create a, a group, a body who can make those decisions, called an oversight board, and they have oversight on these types of issues of moderation at a high level, kind of like the Supreme Court of Facebook. And where it gets really interesting is this oversight board wasn't even really aware of a lot of by the way, one of the important leaks that the whistleblower leaked was that there is a list internally called the X, what was it called, the checklist or something like that, of uh very special folks who are immune from the oversight board, who are immune from moderation, who are able to break Facebook's stated policies and rules. They're allowed to use hate speech. They're allowed to kind of do whatever they want. They have kind of immunity, diplomatic immunity. They're diplomats. They're digital diplomats. So but the oversight board didn't know this, that those people existed. And they thought, oh, well, hang on a second. Doesn't that apply to us? Shouldn't we be the ultimate arbiters of who's allowed to have immunity or diplomatic privilege, or who's, doesn't? And they had no idea this group existed that the whistleblower exposed. So now that's why this is so interesting, that the oversight board is inviting the whistleblower to come have a chat. And the whistleblower has accepted the invitation to brief the oversight board, which the whistleblower claims, that Facebook has lied to the oversight board repeatedly. That's the headline. And so now she's going to spill some additional juicy tea at their little coffee talk and inform them of how Facebook's been lying to them. So now this is getting quite interesting.
Tyler.
Yes.
I have so much about to say about the oversight board, but I'll restrain myself.
Okay.
To just say, like, you want to have a big debate. A debate over the oversight board would be like all the human rights people, because Amnesty refuses to engage because they think this thing has any credibility, because it's basically Facebook regulating itself.
Right.
Whereas Human Rights Watch has one of their senior managers on the oversight board, and it's really a big debate about whether this thing has any legitimacy. Anyway.
Yeah, and then your point is because it was self-selected, like Facebook selected these folks. So
yeah,
right,
exactly. So I mean, how is this really an independent mechanism?
Yeah, how independent can it be if it's self-selected? Similar to, the Hong Kongers would say the same about their new government, where the Beijing's choosing who can run for Hong Kong political offices. So it's hardly an independent government anymore if Beijing's, telling you who you can vote for.
It's basically, some people say that it's Facebook just trying to duck being regulated by putting this kind of phony board in place. But there's a debate.
Perhaps a reasonable assertion. The article is very short, actually. It just says that Facebook whistleblower Frances Hogan said Monday she will meet with the social media company's oversight board sometime in the coming weeks. The oversight board said in a statement it wants to gather information that can help push for greater transparency and accountability. Why it matters. Last week, Hogan urged lawmakers to regulate Facebook, saying it knows its algorithms can lead to teens to pro-anorexia content, and that it boosts extreme content more likely to elicit a reaction from users. Facebook established and funded the Oversight Board in 2020 to provide independent review of its content moderation decisions, and Meg brilliantly outlines how it draws the true independent nature of it. Hogan tweeted confirming that she has accepted the invitation to brief the oversight board, adding that Facebook has lied to the board repeatedly, and I'm looking forward to sharing the truth with them. Dun, dun, dun. Hogan's busy schedule this month will include appearing before the UK Parliament on October 25th to give evidence to the Joint Committee considering what's called the Online Safety Bill, legislation geared towards regulating social media companies in the UK. Here's the quote: "There needs to be greater transparency on the decisions companies like Facebook take when they trade off user safety for user engagement. We look forward to discussing these issues with Frances Hogan," a member of the Parliament chair and the committee said in a press statement. There you go. That's your big story of today. The second biggest is related. It's from the New York Times, and it says internal messages and internal documents and a Mark Zuckerberg question and answer session shows that Facebook's attempts to calm staff, including sending out talking points and holding briefing sessions. And I imagine as I open this article that it's about the fact that a whole bunch of people inside Facebook are now thinking, you know what? We're just coming out of COVID. They're bringing us back to work. You know what? I've had a good run over here. Maybe it's time for me to focus on my true passion projects and everything else, now that I can't, brag at all the cocktail parties that I work at Facebook in the same way that I once did. Maybe it's time to go work at somewhere else so I can impress my friends, get that ego boost, that little dopamine hit that I used to get when I used to tell people I work at Facebook that I am no longer likely to get. Maybe it's time to change gears a little bit. And Facebook knows this. They're quite intelligent, actually, super intelligent folks over there running Facebook, and they understand exactly what I'm describing. And so the article says, at a question and answer session with employees last week, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's chief executive, was asked about Frances Hogan, a former product manager turned whistleblower. Zuckerberg spent about 20 minutes discussing the whistleblower, her testimony, and recent media coverage, all without mentioning Ms. Hogan by name, according to a recording of the meeting obtained by the New York Times. Some of her assertions on how the platform polarizes people, he told employees, were pretty easy to debunk. The chief executive's comments were part of an internal effort that Facebook has begun to manage the fallout from Ms. Hogan's revelations, even as Facebook executives have publicly questioned Ms. Hogan's credibility and called her accusations untrue. They have been equally active with their internal positioning as they try to hang on to the goodwill of more than 63,000 workers and assuage their concerns about the whistleblower. Yes, that, as I said, from the day the first articles came out from the whistleblower through the Wall Street Journal, I said the actual real thing that is the real fundamental true cost, the real damage that could result from this primarily would be the employees leaving and the difficulty of hiring future people. And that is a true cost, that because these companies are essentially battles to acquire talent, and whoever gets the best talent ends up winning. So, and gets the best talent and keeps them focused and pushing. And this could become the new challenge. That's, when the Microsoft law, the big antitrust against Microsoft was happening back in, at the end of the 90s and in the 2000s. Similarly, when you have these wind changes that change how the teams and the company perceives itself publicly, it creates different it's much harder for Microsoft to hire people than, say, a hot new company that's booming. And that this is just what happens. And the tonality and the pride that people have of working at the company is tangible when you walk in the building. And this makes it strategically much, much, much more challenging to bring in the best people. It's easy to bring in people. You still have money. There's people who still need work. You can fill the seats in the bus. The question is, can you get those 1% all-stars who have 10x the productivity, the superstars? Can you attract the superstars? Do the superstars want to go work at Yahoo, for example? No, they don't. They don't want nothing to do with it. Do they want to go work at? Then this is the difficult area, the lake of mediocrity that superstars avoid at all costs. And as a company starts to approach the sea of, mediocrity, that makes attracting those superstars incredibly difficult.
Even if those particular developers, the 10Xers, are working there already, if you don't believe in the company's mission anymore, if you're no longer aligned with what their goals are perceived to be, you aren't going to keep your productivity up.
Right.
You can't operate at the same level that you did before if you fundamentally disagree with what the company you work for is about.
Right. So the chief executive's comments were part of an internal effort that Facebook had begun to manage the fallout from the revelations. To counter Ms. Hogan's claims, which were backed by internal documents that show Facebook's services hurt some children's self-esteem and abetted human trafficking, executives have conducted live internal events with employees, held emergency briefing sessions, and sent numerous memos, according to some of the memos obtained by the New York Times, and interviews with about a dozen current and former employees. Company officials have also provided information on how employees should respond when they are asked questions about recent events by friends and family, according to one memo. Facebook has acted swiftly as employees have become divided on Ms. Hogan, and the people said in internal messages from the past week shared with the New York Times, one worker said that Ms. Hogan was, quote unquote, saying things that many people here have been saying for years, and that the company should listen to her. Another called her testimony amazing and said she was a hero. But others said Ms. Hogan should be served a cease and desist order or sued for breaking her non-disclosure agreement with Facebook. Several disparaged her for lacking knowledge of the topics she addressed in her congressional testimony, according to the message reviewed by the Times. The employee debate inside Facebook is the latest headache for the company and the headache has been created by Ms. Hogan, who worked for the civic information team, etc. Her disclosures have generated a firestorm of criticism, etc. And you get the idea. Messy?
Sorry, I was just gonna say that I think it's
Maria?
hardly
Your
news.
mic, it sounds like something's covering your microphone.
Oh, sorry, I think my mic is broken. But I was just gonna say that I think it's hardly news for the Facebook people. It's just exactly all those prompts on what to respond and how to behave. It's really not about they only just discovered that this is happening.
I can't make out what you're saying. Can you try and move your connection? If it's a cable or a.
Let's go back to her.
Hopefully she can fix that.
Is this better?
There, much better.
Yeah.
This is. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that sorry for taking so much time, but just that this is not news. Normally, when stuff like that happens internally, all you do is really you just brief people on how to, like, first of all, do not speak to the press, and then second of all, if you will, and then you probably should also resign. Then this is what you say. So I think internally this is not any news for Facebook people. And again, I am surprised that this is news at all, but also interesting that you can now change your career to a whistleblower career. And now she gets to travel, testify before all those international courts and committees. And it's a fun thing to do. So kudos to her for figuring out how to get a new career in times of COVID.
Well, there's a little more to it than that, too, because if there is some money that the government gets out of this, most whistleblowers get a nice little chunk of change payout.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, it's a whole freaking career that you can have out of this. But yeah, let's see what happens.
Okay, the second big story is Magic Leap is back in the news. And can we ping in Chris Fornoff, who used to work there, yeah? And this is from Protocol. It says Magic Leap raises another $500 million and says its second generation AR headset will arrive in next year, 2022, with a slimmer form factor and twice the field of view. and this is a very interesting company by Silicon Valley standards. The amount of money they've raised was just the little engine that could. They continue to raise money and focus on an area that is potentially the next platform of the interwebs, where we went from desktop computing to smartphones, and now we'll go into the metaverse. So this is just, there's so much potential if they can manage to get some product market fit. But boy, have they just continued to bring in money over the years without really revealing precisely what they have to show for it.
And I
Maybe,
need to make
yeah, go
sure
ahead.
that that's the right company, Tyler. I'm double checking right now. I've always remembered. I thought he said he worked there. Did they also do the like the mouse that used your hand, like a
Yeah,
gesture driven
that's
mouse?
them. They've pivoted over several hardware
Okay,
products. That's the
I'm
really
pretty
impressive
sure that's
thing.
where he was. I'm pretty sure that's where he was. But so I got to double check.
So the
Yeah,
articles,
they've had several iterations of desktop sort of AR, where you like Minority Report-esque controls. They had one on the screen, they've had several iterations that were on the desktop that you hold your hands over. Now they're going in, they've had several iterations of headsets now. So I'm with Tyler on this. The way they've managed to pivot, which isn't unusual in a company, but it's hardware pivoting. So every time they do this, they've got to then remanufacture everything. They've I don't know how they keep doing this, how they keep raising the funds and then doing a hard pivot on this physical hardware and then going in a new direction. It's really impressive.
They've raised $3 billion US.
Jesus, as I said, it just continues to raise money. Like, holy cow, that's a lot of money for a AR VR, even an AR VR hardware. I know, but the point is, if they get it right, wow. Okay, next one is from, well, let me read the article. It's really short on that one. It just says AR company startup Magic Leap has raised a new 500 million round of funding, and the company is also getting ready to release a new version of its AR headset, which ditches the owl face design for a more glasses-like form factor. Magic Leap 2 is supposed to have twice a field of view. When compared to the previous generation, the device will be available in 2022, but Johnson didn't share any pricing details. Okay, there you go. Next up, from the Financial Times, ex-Pentagon software chief Nicholas Chalian, who recently resigned, the Pentagon's software chief, recently resigned, saying that China is headed for global dominance due to advances in AI and machine learning and cyber capabilities. He speaks of good reason to be angry as Beijing heads for global dominance through tech innovation. In his first interview since leaving the post at the Department of Defense a week ago, he told the Financial Times that the failure of the United States to respond to Chinese cyber and other threats was putting his children's future at risk. Here's the quote: "We have no competing fighting chance against China in 15 to 20 years. Right now, it's already a done deal. It is already over, in my opinion," he said, adding there was good reason to be angry. Chilean, 37 years old, who spent 3 years on a Pentagon-wide effort to boost cybersecurity and is first chief software officer for the U.S. Air Force, said Beijing is heading for global dominance because of its advances in AI, machine learning, and cyber capabilities. He argued these emerging technologies were far more critical to America's future than hardware such as big-budget, fifth-generation fighter jets such as the F-35. Whether it takes a war or not is kind of anecdotal, he said, arguing China was set to dominate the future of the world, controlling everything from media narratives to geopolitics. He added U.S. cyber defenses in some government departments were kindergarten level. He also blamed the reluctance of Google to work with the U.S. Defense Department on AI and extensive debates over AI ethics for slowing the U.S. down. By contrast, he said Chinese companies were obliged to work with Beijing and were making massive investment into AI without regard to ethics. Chilian said he plans to testify to Congress about the Chinese cyber threat to the U.S. supremacy, including in classified briefings over the coming weeks. He acknowledged the U.S. still outspends China by 3 times on defense, but said the extra cash was immaterial because U.S. procurement costs were so high and spent in the wrong areas, while bureaucracy and overregulation stood in the way of much needed change at the Pentagon. His comments came after a congressional-mandated U.S. National Security Commission warned earlier this year that China could surpass the U.S. as the world's AI superpower within the next decade. Senior defense officials have acknowledged they must do better to attract, train, and retain young cyber talent, but have defended what they argue is their responsible approach to the adoption of AI. Michael Groen, a Marine Corps lieutenant, general and director of the Defense Department's Joint AI Center, told a conference last week he wanted to field AI across the military in an incremental way, saying its adoption would require a cultural shift within the military. His comments come after U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said in July his department urgently needs to develop responsible AI as a priority, adding a new $1.5 billion investment would accelerate the Pentagon's adoption of AI over the next 5 years, and that 600 AI efforts were already underway, but he committed that his department would not cut corners on safety, security, or ethics. Chilean announced his resignation in the blistering letter at the start of September, saying military officials were repeatedly put in charge of cyber initiatives for which they lacked experience, decrying Pentagon laggards and absence of funding. Here's a quote: We are setting up critical infrastructure to fail, he said in the letter, which made only cursory reference to advances by China. We would not put a pilot in a cockpit without extensive flight training. Why would we expect someone with no IT experience to be close to successful? While we wasted time in bureaucracy, our adversaries moved further ahead.
Yep. So, Tyler, there's another part of that story, because obviously it's been reported in more than one place. And one of the things that I read in the story that I read earlier was that because 12 employees, supposedly, according to the story I read, decided to leave Google as like conscientious objectors because they didn't want to be involved in making drones that would kill people in war. That's the reason that Google decided to pull away from what it was doing with the Defense Department in AI. And
Why did they?
I can't, because there are 12 people, supposedly 12 employees at Google, put up a stink that they were like, I mean, I'm using the term, it's my term,
Right.
conscientious objector, but that's not really okay.
Right.
They objected to working on, programs that, make weapons.
Right.
So Google decided to, it's a huge company, and decided, well, if these 12 people are so upset, and maybe there's another 20 more, we're not going to go work for the Defense Department.
Right.
And I can't tell you how much that aggravates me as an American, because there's so many people at Google, including all the way up to the senior management, who've done very well in this country. And if we need to have a national defense, and if there are people who don't want to work on it, just replace them, because there'll be other people who will work on it. But I don't like the fact that Google decided to pull out of the whole defense part of the defense contract because they had a couple of employees who had some sort of moral objection. I mean, that's my own view on that. But
My take is they probably pulled out of something visible that you know about, but they're highly active in plenty of other things that you'll never know about.
Yep.
Okay.
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Shin.
Really, my observation of this was that for a role that is fundamentally about change acceleration, why would you come up with a title called Chief Software Officer, which is a really unusual title? And why would you hire someone from outside of the agency who clearly is not in the mood to really shepherd the agency with him, but is going to say, you're going to do this or else? I think this is really set up for failure from the beginning, because there's no way you're going to go steer a ship that big simply because you're right. It doesn't matter that you're right. You're supposed to really enroll and bring everybody with you, and it might take a long time, but that's really the only way.
Well, if he feels like he's on a ship that's destined to hit the iceberg, he's going to jump out in whatever lifeboat he sees available.
Well, that wasn't the job, though. And I also
No,
fault
no,
the
but
agency for giving him
whatever
a
the
title that
if
nobody's going to
if he's
listen to.
on a ship and he's not allowed to have his hand on the wheel. He can only talk to people. He's not actually allowed to touch the wheel. There's other people who have their hand on the wheel, and he's yelling at them to turn the boat at a faster rate, and they're refusing to. And he says, you're going to kill me, and I don't want to die. So I'm out, and I'm going to go jump in. I got my life vest. I see a little boat over there, a little lifeboat. I'll catch you guys later. And by the way,
Yeah,
I'm just
maybe.
on my way out. I'm going to let you guys know, for everyone else who's still on the boat, you're going to hit the iceberg in hopes that you do. My saying this inspires you to turn the wheel faster to avoid the iceberg.
And he may in fact cause some people to turn around and say, okay, what's happening here? But why would you give a title of chief software officer? Nobody's going to listen to a title like that we've never had before. Why is it not like, the major general in charge of digital transformation?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, or information warfare or something like that is
Yeah.
a lot more like, anyway, I thought the whole thing was set up for failure from the beginning.
Perhaps I deeply empathize with this guy's scenario because when I hosted a large conference on the UN global goals and tried to bring all of the Scandinavian entrepreneurs, problem solvers, and investors together with the UN, NGO, foundations, politicians, ministers, and whatever, to help solve the UN global goals, the 17 SDGs. In doing that event, I learned we also are going to hit the iceberg because those folks from the Geneva slash Brussels slash Washington D.C. teams are systematically wrapped up in red tape and bureaucracy that is preventing them from being able to turn the wheel fast enough. And I also felt, we're going to hit this iceberg head on. And it became incredibly clear to me that we're just we're tied to the railroad tracks with handcuffs, and they're get me out of here. I panicked, and that it ultimately was one of the key things that inspired me to go seek my own energy, water, and food, because these systems are doomed to fail. So I can imagine he was going through a similar scenario, watching the machinery around him, unable to keep up with the necessary pace.
Can I add in something here? Yeah. So, I mean, it seems to me like the you know there's this sense of like, oh, we shouldn't talk about this, or it's a little scary. I mean, like, I think we should face it head on. I mean, with quantum computing, we're behind. And if you guys just look up quantum encryption and where we're at, and compared to where China's at, attach AI to that, the ability to basically crack any codes, the various spyware that's out there. I mean, I saw some stuff the last few days that I mean, we shared some stuff in the room, but the stuff I saw just like blew my mind, and as well as a bunch of other security professionals, of what's going on out there. And we were just in a room earlier talking about, oh well, what's natural resources and water and all this other stuff. That's those are things we can potentially overcome. We cannot overcome a global centralized authoritative power that has the access to get any technology, all the R&D, every single thing we got, and crack any darn code out there with quantum. And we're way behind, and we really have like no defenses, and that's a real problem.
I must disagree. I don't think we're behind at all. I think there's a lot of head games going on in this world as well, where people try to look way larger than life. There are a lot more papers being written by other countries, but the quality of those papers are not anywhere near what you see in other parts of the world, especially like the West. So I don't think we're behind, but it's also true that we do not have as much advantage as we did before, and other people are not making as many mistakes as they did before. Having said that, it's also not the case, as I have said on this forum before, that simply because China does something that they got it right. They too are amenable and liable to make mistakes. and they may very well be making some.
But
Okay.
how are we not behind when they have a like their quantum computers are like 100 trillion times faster or
But
like
they're not. They do
they
not. They do not have that.
okay
There's
so
no evidence that what they have is
I'll be back in 1 minute.
is
I mean
in that category.
and they also make all of our phones, right? Like Foxconn makes all of the iPhones over there, right? They make the majority of the phones. They got the Taiwan over there makes 50% of the chips, they're like right next door over there. And so we're like complete like this, and this is what I'm saying. I'm sorry, but like we got to like address this and not be like, oh, we're not behind. No, there's a problem. We have to be ahead, right? Like with this arena, whenever like we're the last country on the planet in the United States that has like this sense of freedom and individual freedom, and then we're like looking right in the face of a country which has a president that's going to be a president for life, and that does massive surveillance on his country and the way that you just look at how a country behaves. Historically, and you could predict what it's going to do in the future, right? And look what it does to its neighbors. I mean, how is this not like a significant, massive problem? We shouldn't water this down. It's a serious.
Oh no,
To
I
me, it's
totally
the
acknowledge that
most serious problem we have.
I believe national competitiveness should be one of the top priorities of the country for a good while. Among other things, national anxiety should be right up there too, reducing it, that is. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're behind. I just think that, yeah, absolutely, this is a really big deal, and we should like do post haste with a sense of urgency, just like you say. I just don't think it's at the same time true that we're behind. I also think we do not necessarily have to be behind to get off our butt and move faster. I think we should be doing it anyway, and we should really lead the way. So I agree with the sense of urgency and what a big problem this is, but I also don't believe that we are behind in quantum computing. I don't believe we're behind in AI. I don't believe we're behind in really any of these big mega trends. And
I'm
now
talking.
manufacturing, we made a bet. We made a bet
No,
decades
I'm talking
ago.
specifically about cyber warfare. That's what it is, right?
I
We're
don't know we're behind there. I just think that they're not so bad, and they're doing a lot of stuff that it's visible. I don't know what we're doing. That is, we wrote the codes, most of them. We kind of know where the back doors are. We should know.
well, based on what we've seen and a bunch of security experts have seen recently, that's here, and I mentioned this in the room. I'll mention it again. Whenever you can crack code, it's not just cracking our phones and getting in there. Whenever you have keyloggers that are inside of the phones that are keylogging information, compressing it, and then
It
going
doesn't.
over
It
it.
doesn't matter, Maher.
Wait, let me finish
The
speaking.
servers have already been compromised. This is a 4-year unwinding process. Let me just lay it down right now, okay?
But let me
When
finish.
China chips, no, 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 no. But when
Chris,
China chips broke, no, I'm telling you,
no, but can I
you're
finish?
raising the red flag. It's great,
But can I just finish
but
my speaking?
consumers,
On
okay, I'll let
is
you
it okay if
finish.
I let me just
I'll let you
finish
finish.
and you can respond, right? I get what I'm saying is this, right? If you have data that is on all of our phones, which is basically like keylogging what we're doing, okay, and then so that gives access to information, and then that's stored on a central spot, and that central spot can then be compromised, and the data access there, the access you now have is into all of the information that you would want, such as the design files, the R&D files, our technology. It's easier to get into those things, and you can just slide in, grab that stuff, and go. Which gives so it's not about like the technology transfer that is occurring or the technology suck that is going is have been happening and is occurring is that's the massive threat. That's the massive problem. And in my opinion, those central storage places where this data is being stored, whether it's Google, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Apple, those to me, in my opinion, are national security locations in which should be highly monitored of what is being sucked in, what's going in there, and what is happening in those arenas right there. I'm not as worried about our government looking at that as I am about other governments looking at that information and being able to suck that out. And those boxes need to be studied and defended, in my opinion. And those are now private situations. We don't fully know what's going on in there, right? Are those being like that's all of our that's okay? So those points, right? That's where the central data. We don't have defenses around those. We should have like massive defenses around those right now. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
So what I was trying to get at, Maher, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was trying to say those servers have been compromised a long time ago. And we have just let it happen because that data is not national security. When China chips broke, I have friends, because my past life is in Apple MFI. I'm a made for iPhone manufacturer. So we make products for Apple iOS accessories, right? And what we do is we design the boards, we design the software, and then we go to a pick and place house that will go lay the boards out for us. Million, they lay out tens of billions of chips a year. And one of them's my friend. And when China chips hit, I gave him a call right away. I'm like, "Hey, are you reading this Bloomberg article?" And he's like, "No, I don't know what's going on there. Give me the 10-second update." And I said, "Well, basically, they've got RF chips integrated into the PCBs, the circuit boards." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, well, we've kind of known about that for a while." And these guys work on the F-35. They work on all of the defense contracting shit. They don't care about this layer because when push comes to shove, right? What is this data good for to a foreign government? I mean, sure, they can make our life annoying, but if it really came down to warfare, which is what we're like most concerned about as Americans, you know, that's not really going to be a big deal.
Well, if they
Well,
have the technology, no, if they
information
have,
warfare will be.
yeah, if they have the technology, right? We're spending all this money on R&D, and if they can get the designs for our fighter jets, if they can get all this information, if they can get
But
into
we've already built in the back doors. We've already had the back doors in for a long, long time. It's just we're not happy because there's no longer a monopoly on it. Is what I'm getting at.
well, I guess
Just
what I'm ultimately saying is this is very simple. This is like the amount of attention that this is receiving right now, and what it should be receiving is not adequate. It should be our defense budget should increase significantly in the areas of AI. And cyber warfare in particular, we should be more protected. That's my, I guess,
But
all.
how do you know that it isn't?
Well, I think
exactly.
that was this guy's point, was that the mix needs to switch towards information warfare and less towards traditional, more towards
But
bits and less
how do
towards
you know
atoms.
that how do you know that CENTCOM isn't already doing it?
Well, the guy just
I,
quit,
I've been
right?
eyeing
I
I've
just
been
think the guy
eyeing
wants more of it, not that it's not being done.
I've been eyeing career shifts for a long time, and they've been hiring cyber warfare people for the last 8 years. You don't think
Yeah,
the
no
cyber
question
warfare
about it. I'm sure we are spending
architecture's
a lot
there?
of money. I think the point of the person who resigned was that it needed to be even more than it is now, and it needed to sway in a bigger way.
Okay, couple things real quick. I trust what the Defense Department and the government is doing, but I also think that there's a couple things. Every decade, we have an enemy. Let's just deal with it. 20 years ago, people were worried about Japan. Um, China, yeah, it's a different story, but there will always be a boogeyman, and there will always be money to be made off of boogeymen. And our Defense Department and everybody else will do what needs to be done, and we have plenty of money over there. And there's a lot of things that we don't know that are happening, and there's a lot of shit stirring that has to be stirred up so that those budgets remain the way they are and more money goes their way. It's just the way it's done.
So
So we'll be fine.
just real quick, Maher, like, are you aware of the fiber optic beam splitters that are in every end terminus of the system?
Yeah, yeah, and then they come in and
So
then
so
it's
so that
or
means
also,
the NSA has everything.
yeah, yeah, and I understand the NSA has a lot of information too, and that doesn't bother me as much as like other countries that have basically a permanent dictator for life and surveil their people and make it very clear that you follow whatever the guys say or you disappear. That's a problem, right? Like
But
that's
isn't that their country's choice? I mean,
yeah,
is it our job? What happened to sovereignty?
that's
Chris,
it.
technical question on this though. If you've got beam splitters on fiber optics, that gives you the raw signal, the physical signal. It does not help you with encrypted traffic, surely. Or
That's
how is
where
that?
the quantum computing comes in, right? I mean, the whole premise of Bitcoin is it's 50 plus 1, right? The good actor, bad actor, once they get quantum,
No,
I don't know
Chris,
But
the
hey,
hang on,
mechanics.
mate.
I don't know the
point one,
mechanics of it
You
A,
enough.
can't.
quantum safe cryptography is already available and is being implemented. quantum
Please don't
key
throw around too
distribution
much.
is already available.
Exactly.
And quantum computing has managed to factor a number as big as 21 so far,
Yes,
at least
thank you, Chris.
publicly. So it's
Thank you, Chris.
way
If you,
to go before it can do those 10,000 digit numbers.
yeah, and we're
Before it
very
can even,
aware within the.
and even then it is just the RSA algorithm. It's not the quantum safe algorithm. So I don't think there really is a problem there as much as there is some indication that people should hurry up and spruce up their security.
Yeah, Chris, have you heard of lattice cryptography? Are you aware of the provably post-quantum safe cryptography like lattice? There's a variation of that called New Hope that is already in Google Chrome, right? We know exactly how to do cryptography that is provably, permanently post-quantum safe. Today, it's in your Chrome browser right now. We're just not using it a few more cycles than standard cryptography, and there's no reason to suspect that anyone has got an error-corrected quantum computer of that sort of width and general capability. We're nowhere near it. When we get anywhere near it, a final error-corrected quantum computer that can actually perform like that, you switch to lattice cryptography, and we're ready to go. It's already written. It's already there. It's already in Chrome. So this FUD around, quantum's going to suddenly break cryptography, that's been known for a long time. It's been solved by the mathematicians a long time ago, and we can permanently circumvent it with lattice cryptography and other such post-quantum safe.
In fact, the literature for quantum safe cryptography goes back to over a decade ago. And there are like books written about this. So it's nothing new. And I think, in fact, some people are already using quantum safe cryptography. There's a cryptocurrency that's using quantum safe cryptography. The Bitcoin is like easily movable to that. It's really not a problem anytime soon. And by the time it is a problem, it'll be better than solved.
But that's not the issue. Is not the issue I see is not necessarily quantum or this. If you can get into people's usernames and passwords and take the technology, and then we're spending all this money on R&D, right? And then you just sit back, let the other folks do the R&D here in America because that's what we do. We're innovators, right? Predominantly, and then hey, just sit back and take the technology and manufacture over there for cheap and continue building up economic power. That's a problem.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we should sit on our laurels. I'm just saying that we need to take all the actions you're saying without simultaneously believing that we're behind.
Okay, let's pause there.
Tyler,
We're gonna
Eli's down there.
Okay.
And thanks for all the points, guys. Again, I'd never profess expertise in cryptography. It's just mechanically on the networks. I do understand how the signals get split, and that it's there.
But the cryptography is a very important part of this. You can have all the physical access to a signal you like, and it's just 50% ones and 50% zeros. Turning that into data that you can actually read and do something with when it's heavily encrypted is not quite so easy, sometimes impossible.
So a few points on this, and I'm gonna work backwards. Yes, post quantum cryptography is a developing field. We don't really know what the adversary model is, and things that at one point appeared to attract confidence have been shown to be less strong than they were initially thought. So I think agnosticism is really the best approach if you want to err on the side of caution. But in terms of collecting all of the data by, say, splitting fibers, they're collecting it, they're holding on to it and storing it either until they can break it by whatever form of cryptanalysis is available, or more realistically, by obtaining keys through other means like compromising devices. Device compromise is always going to be the number one attack vector, and they are actively doing that today, even against ciphers that they could not crack through cryptanalysis.
And then when you have exactly. When you have the data centralized and you can crack the data, then you end up in a situation where you can sit there and start mining it utilizing AI, right? And by the way, as far as the cryptography stuff, I'm going to be bringing on. I've already been texting Dr. Benafa, who is if you look up Ahmed Benafa, he's one of the top guys in blockchain and cybersecurity. And I've texted him back and forth. I'll bring him on in the next few days to talk about all this stuff. Maher Dawudi, I'm complete.
Okay.
Just a couple. Sorry, Tyler. Did you want to move on, mate?
You can have the final word, and then I want to welcome Eric, who just joined us. Yeah.
it's more questions than answers in my final bit. But just a couple of other things to balance this when you're looking at it. I would say look at the cost of storing all of the data that comes through a big hub, and just make sure that that even makes sense to be able to store that. I know the NSA have probably got a lot of money, but just make sure that those figures actually make sense and the storage requirements are actually reasonable. And I don't know the answer, by the way. It's more of a question. I'd look at that. And then the other thing, I just wanted to underscore that really important point about the endpoints being the weak point, the actual phones themselves, which is where, Huawei and Pegasus and all these things are more of a concern. If what we do know is if I go to Tyler's Island with a hard drive full of genuinely random data, 2 copies of it, one for him, one for me, we both go home. And if we want to talk privately, we can in such a way that you can never, ever break that. Just with a single-use substitution cipher. So basically, he has a random hard drive. Every time I send a letter, he shifts things around the clock a little bit, blah, blah, blah. If we decode that on paper, both ends, then we're safe, always will be, never can be broken. You can confidently say that. But it's the endpoints. If we were to use our phones to do the final decoding of that thing, then we're not safe because someone's got access to those freaking phones, and that's a concerning bit. And who the hell's going to be decoding stuff on paper? So at some point, we're going to have to understand and have more self-sovereignty of the actual endpoint hardware, I think, if we want to personally be sure we're safe.
And that's a direction we really need to go in, and we should talk about that in the future, Ben. I know Faraz is also interested in that.
And my final touche is that consider that the Russian government switched to typewriters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tyler, I would love to have a security group or a subgroup.
Yeah.
Within...
You and where's Johan? He's notably missing out of this. Johan has been trying to get that going. We just got to get.
I keep asking him for dates. Sorry, who is the one speaking just now?
Craig.
Craig. Okay, I'll get to Craig. I'll set it up.
So we got 2 Swedes already in on that. And if it takes off, I'll get Franz, who's world renowned as one of the very best cybersecurity experts, to join. He's also from
I'm
Sweden.
happy to help moderate that as well, if needed. Sure.
Yeah, we should definitely do it. Okay, so back to the headlines for a bit here. The next biggest one, we went through the top 5. Number 6 today is an email in an email to employees. Andy Jassy says Amazon. He's the new CEO of Amazon, filling in for Jeff Bezos. Andy Jassy says Amazon will leave remote work decisions to team leaders. Oh boy, that could get messy because now you got individual teams having individual policies, and you have hundreds of teams inside of Amazon, and you're going to get potentially a bunch of jealousy going on there. And you might get team leaders weaponizing their new autonomy so that they could recruit smart brains from other teams. So that's a little too bad, Shahin, that you got to work on that team that's being forced to go back to the office. You could join my team. I don't force my team to go back to the office. How does that sound? You want to join my team? That could get really wild. So I hope they think through those things very carefully, as they no doubt do. There are a bunch of smart folks over there at Amazon, and leaving remote work decisions to team leaders instead of having everyone return under one big policy. Well, sounds good in concept. Let's see how that turns out. The next article.
I think this is further reinforcement of what you were saying earlier about how hard it is to get these big talents. And if you mess with them, they'll quit, and you want them. And, I do some marketing work, and increasingly our marketing work has to include recruitment as part of its objective. It's not just selling the company to investors and selling the product to customers. You have to sell the whole thing to employees, potential employees.
So the next one is Microsoft makes a preview versions of Windows subsystem for Linux for Windows 11 available in the Microsoft Store. Who cares? Next is Twitter now lets web users remove followers without having to block them after testing the option for over a month. All Twitter users can now remove a follower without blocking them. The company started testing this option last month, and starting today, everyone will have access to it. The question is, how do you do it? So I'm tweeting this out so that you can see, and I'll try and verbally explain how they explain it here. It says, to quietly stop someone from seeing your tweets in their feed, go to the followers tab on your profile, Click the 3-dot menu next to the user in question and select Remove this follower. This is part of Twitter's effort to reduce harassment on the platform. Blocking someone you don't want to follow you could lead to retaliation from that person via their allies or their secondary accounts after they find out. Cutting them in this fashion and muting them will mean they're none the wiser that they're out of the loop. So what happens when they go back to your account and they see that they're not following you and they try to refollow you? This method won't prevent someone you boot from your followers list from seeing your public tweets. Only blocking them or making your account private will do that. Elsewhere, Twitter is testing safety mode, which automatically blocks accounts that use potentially harmful language. It's also looking into more ways to filter and limit replies, so it sees the company is making its anti-harassment efforts a bigger priority. Okay. A little confusing, but I guess we'll all find out very soon how it works in practice. So the next one is that Microsoft and NVIDIA claim to have trained the largest and most capable AI language model yet, containing 530 billion parameters. Does anyone happen to know how many parameters were in GPT-3, Ben? I think we covered that at one point.
Yeah, I think that's 5.3 times larger than GPT-3,
So it was
roughly, or 5-ish.
It was about 100 billion previously.
I think so, from memory.
So that it's this kind of the headline speaks for itself. Microsoft and NVIDIA today announced they've trained what they claim is the largest, most capable AI-powered language model to date, Megatron Turing Natural Language Generation, MTNLP. The successor to the company's Turing NLG-17B and Megatron LM models, MTNLP contains 530 billion parameters and achieves quote-unquote unmatched accuracy in a broad set of natural language tasks, Microsoft and NVIDIA say, including reading comprehension, common sense reasoning, and natural language inferences. Here's the quote: "The quality and results that we have obtained today are a big step forward in the journey towards unlocking the full promise of AI in natural language. The innovations of DeepSpeed and Megatron LM will benefit existing in the future AI model development and making large AI models cheaper and faster to train." NVIDIA's Senior Director in Product Management and Marketing for Accelerated Computing, what a great title, Paresh Karya, and Group Program Manager for Microsoft Turing Team, Ali Alvi, wrote in a blog post, "We look forward to how MTNLG will shape tomorrow's products and motivate the community to push the boundaries of natural language processing even further. The journey is long and far from complete, but we are excited by what is possible and what lies ahead." And then they draw a chart of how they've surpassed GPT-3. And it shows them quite ahead on this chart. So let's see how it works in practice. And no doubt developers will be playing with it and seeing what it can do. But GPT-4 is currently in the works. So let's see how long Microsoft and NVIDIA are able to stay ahead of OpenAI and until they release GPT-4. And let's see if GPT-4 surpasses even this new Microsoft-NVIDIA partnership, which it almost certainly will. But great that there's competition there to inspire them to go full steam ahead. Next up, sources say that HTC's Vive Flow VR headset to be released on Thursday this week. Yes, HTC is still in the VR game. It's called HTC Vive, and they have a VR headset called Flow, which will come out on Thursday, features 6 degrees of freedom tracking, and is mostly for content consumption and casual gaming. HTC is set to unveil a new consumer headset at an online event Thursday. Okay, so we will look for those headlines when that is announced and when the reviews come in. The next one is that Facebook adds something they call Audio Hub to the mother Facebook app in the US. which features podcasts, live audio rooms, which is their version of Clubhouse. That's what they call it, live audio rooms, and short form audio, like TikTok for audio. Not that anyone ever asked for that, but here it comes. And it rolls out the live audio rooms globally. So now their version of Clubhouse is now being rolled out globally. Although I'm not aware of anyone other than Mark Zuckerberg who used a live audio room since they launched it in the limited capacity in the U.S. But we'll see. Maybe your cousins and grandparents will be doing live audio rooms, and I'm sure those will be very exciting. And yes, it's buried inside the Facebook app. When you next update your Facebook app, you get to it by simply in the bottom menu of the phone. You'll know in the bottom left is the home feed. Next to that is looks like a little video icon where you watch videos in YouTube. That is also going to include the audio, where you can get to the podcasts and the live audio rooms and the short form audio. So we'll see how well their version of Clubhouse does and their podcasting does. Into some of the fundraisings and whatnot. Munich-based Personio, maker of cloud-based HR and recruitment software, raises $270 million. Wall Street Journal says they have analysis of the leaked data from Twitch. Twitch got totally pwned, 100% full pwnership. Total, utter leakage of all things Twitch, including all of the revenue that their users make. So it shows user by user who's making the most money and how much they're making, which some security experts have said, well, now they're going to be, those high earning Twitch users are going to become targets because they're making a significant amount of money. And the question is, how much money? Well, the Wall Street Journal did a little bit of analysis. They busted out a calculator, a TI-85, and they figured out that from the leaked data, 4.9 million Twitch accounts, the top 1% of those accounts made over half of the money in 2021. 3/4 of those accounts, 75% of those accounts, made under $120. So boy, oh boy, is there some wealth disparity going on over there in Twitch. Nearly identical to the numbers in the United States of America, where 1% also makes about half of the revenue. And is that a coincidence? Or is there some interesting dots to connect between there? And by the way, YouTube's numbers are also very similar to that, where the top 1% of YouTube earners earn about half of the revenue in YouTube. And if YouTube and Twitch and America, where 1% makes half the revenue, what are we to, maybe there's some research that needs to be figured out as to exactly why that is.
These are power law distributions.
Exactly.
It's
all,
Tyler,
by the
what was
way,
number?
it's also the same in the music industry. Of
By the way, hey, Tyler,
artists with major record label deals. The 1% of artists make about half the revenue. Yes, Mara.
Yeah, what was it? What was the number? I was curious about the math, right? What was the total number of revenue?
I don't have the total revenue number, but I have 4.9 million Twitch accounts, paid Twitch accounts. I'm sure the article does say the total revenue. So let's open the article and see what it says. I was just reading the headline. So it says total earnings was 889 million.
Okay, so what's that? 889 million divided by, what's that? 49,000 or something like that.
4.9 million accounts.
And but you said the top one, so it's 4.9 million, and then the top
1% made 529 million of that 889 million, so a little over half.
So 529, 4.9. I'm going to play around with that.
The top 100 users made 82 million, so 10% to the top. So again, nearly identical to America. Well, no, less than, because the top 100 in America are even about half of the U.S. Revenue. So anyway, let me tweet it out so you can do better math on this. So I'm tweeting it to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW, where we also have the live streaming. And then we get into the next article, like this one from Bloomberg, that says Facebook says it will stop linking a user's Facebook and Instagram accounts behind the scenes for advertising purposes due to privacy and regulatory changes. Okay, next up. The information says they have sources that Tiger Global and Katu are co-leading a $400 million round for cryptocurrency payments startup called MoonPay at a $3.4 billion valuation in its first VC funding. Did somebody say crypto fintech is hot? DeFi. My goodness.
Bubble.
My
Bubble.
goodness. That's some healthy valuations going on over there. The next one from The Atlantic. How influencer organized campaigns are succeeding at ampli- amplaganda. It's kind of a concatenation of amplify and propaganda, shaping public perceptions via messaging that is amplified by social network algorithms. This sounds interesting. Here we go. From The Atlantic. It's not misinformation, it's amplified propaganda. You don't need fake accounts to spread amplaganda online. Real people will happily do it. And this is being written by Renee DeResta, is the technical research manager at the Stanford Internet Observatory. As usual, The Atlantic has some rather some smart people with proper backgrounds to write these articles, which is why we love The Atlantic. And it says, one Sunday morning in July last year, a message from an anonymous account appeared on Bernie or Vest, a Discord chat server from fans of Senator Bernie Sanders. It contained an image of Shahid Buttar, the San Francisco activist, challenging House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the 2020 congressional runoff, and offered explicit instructions for how to elevate the hashtag Pelosi must go to the nationwide trending list on Twitter. Shahid says, read the large print, draft some tweets with Pelosi must go. Don't forget to capitalize each word in the hashtag. Don't use more than 2 hashtags, otherwise you'll be marked as spam. The call to action urged people to start posting at noon Pacific time, attach their favorite graphics, and like and retweet other supporters' contributions. And that, my friends, is the recipe for how to get a trending topic nationally on Twitter. If you follow that precisely, where everyone starts doing it at precisely the same time, uses images, 2 hashtags, no more, and make sure you all use the same grammar in your hashtag, where you capitalize the first letter of each word. If you all do that in coordination, you can trend in the US on Twitter. And if you do, boy, then the mainstream media will pick it up and run with it. And so the article continues that the author was living in San Francisco then and had been following the efforts to get attention as traditional outlets largely ignored the Democratic Socialist underdog campaign the day before. I think we know where this article's going. It says, in fact, we have a very odd word for persuasive communication with an agenda called propaganda. That term, however, comes with historical baggage. It presumes that governments, authority figures, and institutions of mass media are forcing ideas on regular people from the top down. But more and more, the opposite is happening. Far from being merely a target, the public has become an active participant in creating and selectively amplifying narratives that shape realities. Perhaps the best word for this emergent bottom-up dynamic is one that doesn't exist quite yet, because propaganda implies top down. So they're calling it amplaganda, the shaping of perception through amplification. It can originate from an online nobody or an on-screen celebrity. No single person or organization bears responsibility for its transmission, and it is having a profound effect on democracy and society. The Pelosi must go hashtag was both typical and unusual. Hashtags campaigns occur all the time, but I happened to catch this one right at the start. First, it was a blip in a corner of the internet, but the hashtag soon lit up on the modern propaganda system. The amplification chain is incredibly powerful. It surfaces civil rights violations, protest movements, breaking events, whether traditional media choose to cover those events or not, but it's also how quack medical claims and the daily parade of conspiracy theories are made to trend. Hashtag ivermectin. Hashtag save the children. Hashtag stop the steal. Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the capitalization part. Carl or Ben, is this because of the search? Basically, it weights capital letters greater than lowercase, and then it will rank it higher. Like, that's just fascinating that they know that level of detail on how the search algorithm's gonna pop it up, because that's as far as I know, that's true, right? Like, when you search for things, if the first letter's capitalized, it's going to be number one, just due to how the how computers rank search.
Normally, search algorithms would be case insensitive because there's not really much of a benefit to do it otherwise.
But
The one
would there
thing that
be a
I'd say is
sort?
this
I
is
meant sort. Sorry.
yeah, this is much more likely for human readability. That is, when you're glancing at a string of text and it's camel case is what it's called. It's easier for the person to pass. If you what was it? Something about Pelosi. If that was all lowercase, that's actually quite hard for a human to read, and you just glance over it and you move on. So
Carl, I
for the
think he
way
was
that we
saying that.
actually read the internet, the way that you glance at text, it's easier if it's camel case. So I think it's more that than for algorithms.
Yeah, I think Chris meant to say sort, not search, though.
Yeah, I meant sort. Sorry.
So next up is from Reuters. Israeli startup Wiz, which helps companies identify cybersecurity threats, raises $250 million at a $6 billion valuation. French startup Swile, WSILE, which offers an app to manage employee benefits, raises $200 million at a $1 billion valuation from SoftBank. And SoftBank also invests in London-based Elliptic, which helps analyze blockchain transactions, raising $60 million. And the Financial Times has a headline that says the EU's proposed big tech regulations have become bogged down in the European Parliament and now risk being watered down and heavily delayed. I got to say, this comes as a huge surprise that the EU Parliament is bogged down and heavily delayed with issues going on over there. That's stunning. That's really terribly upsetting and shocking and surprising. I wonder what could possibly be afoot there. The next one from CNBC, they've done a profile on Ifeoma Azoma as the launcher of the Tech Work Handbook, an online guide for tech workplace complaints, and also the co-author of the Silence No More Act that just became law in California. And now she's being profiled by CNBC because that is the fact that she was in the news twice last week for two totally separate initiatives, two different actions she took. She was not on Twitter tweeting, doing tweet threads. No. She wasn't trying to talk shit. She was too busy doing shit.
Doing shit.
And she did some really impressive shit. Whether you agree with her politics or not, she's done some shit that is going to cause some additional big shit is about to go down. Shit is about to go down due to the doings of Miss Azoma, because now that she's provided a tech worker handbook for people to whistleblow very effectively and passed a law with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, to protect them so that they can whistleblow even if they've signed an NDA. Watch out, folks. You're going to have a whole shitstorm of whistleblowers from big tech because of Miss Azoma. I whether or not I am in favor of it, I have to applaud her ability to get shit done. We need more people that can do shit. And this lady can do shit. So I applaud you, Mrs. Zoma. And let's hope that the outcome of this is positive. I'm up for being convinced one way or the other. This could be tragically good or bad for big tech, but we will find out soon.
In the long run, this will probably be good for the simple reason that just like, don't say something on the internet that you wouldn't want on the front page of the New York Times. Don't run your business in a way that would cause where people being able to talk about it would cause problems.
Alrighty, I'm just sending a quick DM here.
Hey, Tyler and
Yes,
group, what this also makes me think about is what does this do to the NDAs? Right now, we're talking
right,
about tech, but the concept of NDAs
correct.
across everything
Yep,
is huge.
yeah, that's right.
It won't affect business strategy and it won't affect technical information, but it will affect, people hiding improper action in the workplace.
Oh, I'm talking court, total court cases. There will be judgments at the state level and it'll eventually go to, somebody's going to take this to court relating to the concept of NDAs. And that'll be interesting.
So there's a new article from the Wall Street Journal that just made the list of top articles that says how autonomous trains, likely easier to deploy than autonomous vehicles, could help unclog America's congested supply chains and offer a greener alternative. Okay, so now we've gone through the popular articles, and now we get into the fun, juicy tweets, like this first one from.
Just
Yep,
just on that real quick, Tyler.
yep,
I don't know how much a train operator gets paid, but it's not like there's one in every car, right?
right. It's
Like
the whole train now.
what? Like how much could you possibly save? Or are they more worried about like the person falling asleep or something like that? Anyway, sorry.
It's all right. Next up, in the tweets here, we've got a whole bunch of tweets to go through here. We've got this first one from Katerina, who sends in fantastic tweets all the time. And this one's from nature.com. It says how antiviral pill molnupiravir shot ahead in the COVID drug hunt. So the Merck pill, which could become the first oral antiviral COVID treatment, forces coronavirus to mutate itself to death. By the way, in the time since that came out last week or so, is it AstraZeneca in the past 24 hours announced their similar pill, which has a similar 50% reduction in ICU and deaths as a result of taking their treatment. So now we've got two competing. Hopefully that will lower the price on these, because I know this molnupiravir is about $700 per course, and I don't know the cost of the AstraZeneca treatment, but they're not cheap. The next one from John Capp sends a headline from the Wall Street Journal, which reads, Xi Jinping makes China a dangerous place for investment. What the state wants, the state gets. That makes the business climate unstable and ethically risky, according to the Wall Street Journal, to which Ray Dalio would say, yes, it's very, very risky if you don't know how that game is played. If you do know how the game is played and you're on the inside, boy, is it a fantastic place to make billions of dollars. If you're on the inside, if you know how the policy changes are being made, the policy changes get made very quickly. Industries get boosted and killed very efficiently or very rapidly. In fact, overnight. And if you happen to know what is likely to get killed or boosted, boy, can you make $1 billion overnight. And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be playing in this casino, cowboy. You might want to go back and play in one of those safer kiddie pool casinos over there. So this is high stakes gambling over here. This is the VIP section of the casino, where you better know how to play the game or get the fuck out. You're gonna get hurt, child. So, yeah, it's not for the regular tourist casino visitor. This is for the professionals who know how to play the game with the CCP. So the next one is from Damalaire, who found a really interesting one from the Metro UK, that somebody has discovered that their garden statues in their garden turned out to be 5,000-year-old ancient Egyptian artifacts. And the relics had been left out in the garden for years, but still turned out to be worth an incredible sum of money. They'd just been sitting there in their garden in the rain every day, and they were ancient Egyptian artifacts. And
Probably the husband or wife was debating throwing them out for the last 20 years or so.
too funny. The next one from Pam in the audience sends in this one from New Atlas. The headline says Himalayan fungus compound refined to offer 40 times the anti-cancer potency. By using a compound derived from a Himalayan fungus and used for centuries in Chinese medicine as a jumping off point, scientists have developed a new fungal anti-cancer treatment. And it looks wild. It looks totally wild. From the research carried out at University of Oxford, scientists in collaboration with a bio company called Nucana began with a compound, a naturally occurring nucleoside analog has been used to treat inflammatory disease and cancer for hundreds of years, but runs into several barriers that severely limit its effectiveness when deployed to tackle tumors. And now they've cracked the code on that. So hopefully we got a new cancer treatment on our hands here. That would be fantastic. So I just tweeted that out for those who want to read more about that. And then Evan found one from Tel Aviv of drone deliver sushi and ice cream from above. And it's a Tel Aviv based drone delivery company delivering sushi and ice cream. Lickety split. And you can see the drone. It looks very, very different from the Google drone by comparison. But you can see that. And then Pam also sends in this one, that purifying hydrogel tablet makes river water drinkable within an hour. Access to clean water is a major unmet need in many parts of the world. Researchers at the University of Texas at Austin have developed a new hydrogel tablet that could help, with a prototype able to disinfect a liter of water in an hour.
This is awesome.
Well, it's particularly useful in Austin, where their water became undrinkable recently. And the city said to boil your water.
So this pill basically like comes out and makes a gel that grabs all of the particles and just encapsulates it.
Yeah.
There's been a number of companies doing the same thing. I wonder how this differs, because these have been a while around for. This has been like the goal, isn't it? A really easily manufacturable tablet or powder that you can mix with water that then aggregates all the particulates and you can just filter it out. But these have been around for a little while, so it'll be interesting to see how this is different.
Okay, and then Evan found one from Wired that the headline reads, "We need to talk about Apple's surveillance empire." Apple has taken a public stand on privacy, curtailing data abuses by apps and declaring it doesn't exploit its users' information. However, among tech giants, Apple stands out for its insistence offering privacy features. Instead of joining its competitors in the exploitation of users' personal data, Apple CEO Tim Cook recently clashed with Facebook on exactly those grounds, making a point during a podcast interview of defending privacy over the social network's data-hungry ad-based model. When it comes to privacy, the maker of the iPhone is presenting itself as a good actor, but is that actually the case? Because our friend Maurer here, did he jump out? Hosted a room a few days ago with a cybersecurity researcher who goes by the name Data. I think his parents call him Jonathan. And he found some really interesting shit on your phones, that Apple is in fact collecting thousands of data points about you on your phone. That you probably
five thousand, more than 5 to 7,000 to be exact. And then Umesh was also a security professional. He took this stuff and then he started running stuff, and in 1 minute on his Mac, he got like 300 or 400 MB, and he was blown away. It's like, why is all this stuff being tracked? And and you know, then there's, you know, Jennifer, and there's a whole security group that looked at all this stuff. Like, this is extremely alarming information.
Well, but this is their first party data, right? Because they, by their own definition, they own the hardware, they own the software, so they have the right to track, even for performance reasons.
Okay, so but they're tracking every single key we type, right? Like, you track you type you. So every single
Yes.
key, they're key logging everything, compressing it, sending it over, and that's okay with everybody, right? Like they're basically key logging and centrally storing all of our stuff. They're also sniffing the routers, right? So they can get the username, the password to your router, and then they're going in and collecting all the data, the packets flying around on the network, including other devices, right? Not Apple devices, right? So basically, all the data that they could possibly capture on the network, they're capturing it, but it's okay. Like, oh yeah, it's all good. They could just go ahead
I
and
I'm not saying.
key
Yeah,
logging
I'm
is
not.
cool. That's not, no, you can't have blanket statements saying, yeah, it's okay. No, you're using their device, and they could just keylog and get access to all my bank account information or all my logins to secure information. And this is what I'm saying, right? Like if you have the keylogging and then they compress it down to it, and they have a beautiful compression system in there, right? And then so you compress it down, and you have all this data stored, creating a nice central pot for anybody to hack and have the keylog data of the entire, like, this is an international problem. Like I don't understand. It's just like, oh yeah, it's okay, you signed this terms and conditions that nobody reads. And then he showed us a bunch of different things too, such as, like if you go to a feedback deal, you can't even decline the acceptance. This is overreach. This is fucking ridiculous. It's fucking bullshit.
I
Okay,
agree.
well,
Meher, where do you find a
wait.
link to this?
He did a YouTube video all about it.
I brought Jonathan Data he was actually the number one hacker in the world, in the U.S., number 4 in the world. Right, the guy is brilliant, working as a postdoc. He came on. So if you look up Jonathan Data one, you'll see him on there. I mean, he's getting trolled right now, and actually we had a room in where he showed us some like how to do it, and he created the ability to do it. And there were several of us, from here on Clubhouse and security stuff, and we're like, dude, you cannot release this shit. Like how to get in there. Like basically can just release the code and show, hey, here's how you could get in there, get into that file, but then you could get into any phone and get into those files, which would be a massive security threat. So think about that, right? Think about that. If they're logging all of this information on the phone, if Jonathan was able to do it, somebody else could do it, and then somebody else releases the technology to do it. That means anybody could start cracking into stuff. That's a massive security threat for all of us. Like I just don't see how this is just like, oh, it's okay, it's all good, and they
Well,
all the touch points, biometric data, like our router information, other devices
Yeah,
flying
we
around, the
got that.
packets flying around.
Maria?
yeah, but like if you, yeah, I just sorry because I couldn't even get through it. But I'm not saying it's okay as in this is justifiable. But what I'm saying is that this is the reality of it, and that yes, people just go for convenience, and that convenience comes at this price, and
No, it
everyone
doesn't.
is
I paid
wait.
for this phone. We paid $1,400 for these phones, right? It's not,
Yeah,
no.
Hey,
but
let's let her
Let her
finish.
finish.
Let's
Yeah.
let her finish.
yeah, but the fact that this is the price that you paid for the device, but no one has ever promised this, robust security. Like the reality of this is like if that was the case, the cost of that service, the cost of that hardware would have been much higher, and nobody would have bought it. So people do sacrifice their privacy for the convenience of use and connectivity, and this is why we have a huge ad-based model of businesses, because people are willing to give up their data so that they can use services for free. I mean, that is just the reality, and you can introduce more secure hardware, yes, and more secure services, but they will come at a much higher cost, and you have to then find the audience or the client base that will pay for it.
That's
Um,
not true, because if this is actually on LG, it's on Samsung, it's on a bunch of different devices. It's been going on for almost 20 years. It was on
right.
Nokia phones, right? Like there's basically inside of the hardware chips, there's some little worm that pops up and is collecting information. And you know what? Some of us are wondering if even Apple knows about this stuff, right? We were over here trying to figure out where's this origin. This is not some small thing, right? This is like a big thing. And then this argument, like when I hear these kind of arguments, oh, this is the price. No. I don't accept that. That's some crap somebody was started putting out there, and then it just gets regurgitated, right? I did not. None of us here agree, right, that we're going to pay 14 and the cost of this device. No, it wouldn't cost more, because there's plenty of alternative phones that are cheaper, much cheaper, right? And we're paying for this phone. I don't think
Well,
any one
then you
of
can use the other phone. then you have the choice to use other technology
Well,
if this
that
technology
brings up
is
Hold
not
on.
up
this
to
brings
So
up a
snuff.
so
great
my
point, because the assumption of many Apple users is that I'm paying a premium price because they know they can get similar hardware at a much reduced cost, right? Everyone knows you can go get a Xiaomi phone with very similar specs to the iPhones for about half the price. But I'm willing to pay a premium for the Apple phone because, in some part, it's implied that I'm getting something additional to the hardware, which is this privacy. And some people, I would argue, many Apple users think that they're paying a premium for this privacy, which it turns out might not be the case.
And
Well,
they pull out
interestingly,
big
it's
so
huge.
never been.
But
They have
They
huge
never.
I
ads.
think
They
you
have huge
both agree.
ads.
I think you both agree with what I just said. So,
We do. We do.
right, that's my
I
point.
think.
Is
I think.
if that's true, if it turns out that there starts to develop a really strong case publicly against Apple on this issue, that could likely cause a lot of people who have been paying this additional uh, cost for what they perceived was a benefit that turns out not to be, then that would drive a lot of people towards those cheaper phones. Because if your privacy is compromised anyways, well, I might as well get the phone at half the cost.
And
Well,
Tyler,
it's
interestingly
not.
there's
enough, I
also
don't
your
think. Okay, sorry.
Let me
Sorry.
just say
sorry.
one thing. It's not just guys. Okay, there's difference between collecting data and then collecting every single keystroke that is made and having our usernames and passwords and places that we log into centrally stored somewhere. That is a big problem. And you know what? I'm here. I've seen the ads. I know here in India, I've seen them big old, huge, massive ads. Apple privacy, right? Let me see them come out with an advertisement saying, "Hey, big old ad. We track everything single keystroke that you do on your phone and see how quickly
Yeah,
they
but
continue to sell phones."
sure. But I
So
would just want to say one thing. I think people conflate the value proposition that Apple has had for years, which is better design and better UX, with privacy that has become their agenda only in the last 2 years when they tried to get rid of Facebook. Like this is privacy is new. Like they've never been talking about the safety of their data or anything like that for many years, and it's always been just that it's more beautiful, more seamless, all of this like Steve Jobs principles rather than data privacy. Like,
Okay, are they
so
liable? Are they liable if we get hacked? If different people are getting hacked, right? Are they liable because they're tracking our stuff and storing it somewhere, right? They're storing this information of sensitive login information, not to other websites, to our like when we go to work, we sign R&D contracts and people are supposed to keep
It's a
things confidential,
You bring an
you know?
interesting point, because they also want to claim that it's their device, but they don't want to be responsible if their device leads to you getting hacked. So that's an interesting point I've not heard phrased before. So anyway, we got to move on before, but that we
Actually, real quick point,
yep.
Mayor. To get this taken seriously, it needs to be replicated by respected cybersecurity researchers. I would suggest Citizen Lab, the organization that found the Pegasus spyware. You should get in touch with them, or the guy you're talking about should be in touch with them.
And then the last question is there is the ability to check or uncheck whether or not you're sending data back to Apple for analytics. Do we know that those cases where the packages were found,
Yep.
that wasn't selected?
Yeah, yeah.
Or
He basically he toggled those off, right? He toggled
yeah.
those off. Not only that, he toggled off Siri, disabled Siri, and Siri is still collecting data and still listening and collecting information, right? And if you toggle it off, now he did recommend. He said everybody should toggle it off, because then if you toggle it off, don't send the analytics, don't send this data, and they're still collecting it. Then you have an avenue for basically liability claims, right, around this when this comes out. And as far as security professionals, yeah, so he's going down that route. It's just a matter of, we've been talking about him trying to figure out, and he's got attorneys as well, kind of looking at that, trying to figure out, okay, how do you, because he's going to be a target for basically exposing information, right? So he's a target for exposing information that we assume is not happening, and he's supposed to be quiet about it, right? And then and then if he discloses the, get this, here's what's interesting, right? So if he had this code he created, if he disclosed that, okay, he put that out there, here's how you could get into the phone. right? What would happen? He would be liable if somebody goes around hacking other people. That he would get in trouble, but not Apple, right? That's kind of weird.
Okay, Citizen Lab found Pegasus. They didn't disclose it. They did the right thing. They're the people to go to.
Okay, here we go. Back to the headlines here. This one from Luis from NBCNewYork.com. NBC is one of America's big legacy news channels. They say that the feds to deploy a non-toxic gas in New York City subways to test for biological attack readiness. New York City's response plans for a chemical or biological attack will be put to the test in the coming weeks as part of a study of the city's subway system. Can anyone from the East Coast confirm if that's ever been done before in New York? That's a little concerning.
They tried it with
Chemtrail.
rats, it just doesn't work.
My first thought is that chemtrail conspiracy theorists are going to have a field day with this.
Absolutely.
There were tests in the 60s of putting different types of bacteria in the studies in the subways to see how far they would spread. They were mildly pathogenic, if I remember correctly.
The Metro Transit Authority, MTA, says that the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, working alongside a team of researchers and city agencies, will deploy a non-toxic gas this month at about 120 locations operated by transit agencies. The tests will be conducted on 5 separate days between October 18 and 29. Anyone in the vicinity of testing operations is advised that the gas is non-toxic and poses no health risk to the public. I guess I have to warn everybody for fear that, people will have their cameras ready. And if they catch anybody doing this, that'll inspire far more conspiracy theories if they don't come out clean and announce this up front.
Having grown up in New York City, I would say the bigger concern, and I don't know enough about the chemicals and the biology for this, but would be if there was a biological agent that was, let's say COVID or something like that, that is transmissible, and you infect people with that, and it doesn't matter whether the gas can go from this station to that station to that station. People go from station to station. They go, the trains move throughout the city, and all of a sudden you're spreading. You could spread a communicable disease or something that's communicable. And I don't know. I mean, so we already know that. So I'm not really sure what they're testing.
Here it says. I found it. It says, it's to learn more about the relationship between airflow in street level and underground environments. Commuters can expect to see teams of researchers working at locations scattered across the city, both above and below ground. The study is part of an ongoing testing under the Federal Urban Threat Dispersion Program. New York City has tested this before back in 2016, as have other cities, including Washington, D.C. and Boston. Okay. Get those cameras ready. The next one from Faraz. It says that YouTube deletes and restores Bitcoin bull Anthony Pompliano, known colloquially as Pomp, the Pomp podcast, who's a very big advocate for Bitcoin. And he took to his Twitter account yesterday to say, I just got canceled on YouTube and showed the receipts for no reason, with no explanation, with no ability to get back on, to have it restated. And boy, did that lead. He's quite popular on Twitter and on YouTube. And that led to a huge outcry because that's an interesting case because he's not doing the normal things that people get canceled for. He's just talking about Bitcoin. So this got very confusing very quickly. And it even led to the most popular room in Clubhouse, English Clubhouse anyways, about 12 hours ago was precisely this. Pomp got canceled. Are all Bitcoiners next? Was the Clubhouse room that was inspired by this news. But apparently he's now been, his account has been reactivated on YouTube. YouTube first stated that the content in an interview on Bitcoin was harmful and dangerous, said Pomp. Then they stated we would receive a strike, but then I received a second email saying the channel was being deleted seconds later. According to Pomp, he had received no strikes. Violations of YouTube's community guidelines, 3 strikes within 90 days, can result in a channel being permanently removed. And the video seemingly didn't have any questionable content. However, the platform's guidelines state it has the right to remove channels for a single case of severe abuse. YouTube had previously targeted crypto-related content on the platform, with its algorithms labeling videos on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as harmful content, and leaving human reviewers to assess any ground for appeal. In Pomp's case, he was able to get the attention of YouTube's support team on Twitter within minutes, likely due to his 1.1 million followers and verified account. However, other crypto content creators have reported waiting days after having their channels similarly terminated. The seemingly arbitrary removal of the account of major player in the crypto space highlights the danger of relying on a centralized platform like YouTube. Last week, Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp went offline for roughly 6 hours, likely disrupting community engagement around crypto and blockchain projects. In addition, YouTube has been at the center of attention for attempting to purge videos related to misinformation on health around COVID-19. In August, the platform said it had removed more than 1 million videos related to dangerous coronavirus misinformation.
It makes me wonder, Tyler, if you know how sometimes in Clubhouse, if a room has too many moderators, one of the moderators could get pissed off at something or someone else and then cancel them out, even though they also may be a
Sure.
moderator. And so it makes me wonder that if this is just something that might have happened behind the curtains in YouTube, maybe it was something just like you guys were talking about in the beginning of the conversation today, where there was this room about Ethereum versus Bitcoin. So maybe it was just somebody there that had the power to switch him off just to, cause a big stir. And it wasn't necessarily something that might have, been through YouTube themselves. And that's probably why they brought him back on. I mean, it's just a thought.
It was an interview. He was interviewing a Dutch gentleman who goes by the anonymous name Plan B. And he is the author of something called the stock to flow model, which I'm sure some people here are familiar with. That was apparently what triggered it.
Oh, that was the particular video that they marked.
Yeah, it was an interview with this guy, Plan B.
And I wonder what in that interview triggered that.
Basically, the summary of the interview is he's predicting that the price of Bitcoin will go to 288,000 US dollars. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the end of this year or Q1.
Okay. So next up is from Faraz, that an Emiratis group called DNADA invests in drones for warehouses. Drone technology to handle inventory monitoring of shipment at warehouses. So you could have drones zooming around. That's kind of genius. That could be totally genius. If you could have drones doing warehouse inventory, you could save an incredible amount of time. That'd be amazing. The next one is from The Guardian, from Poppy. It's titled...
Sorry, last part about that too, Tyler.
Yeah.
RFID already answers a ton of those problems, but if you mounted those radios on the drones, then you really have a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the radios are moving and giving you an updated field view of your warehouse. Because I did a lot of RFID work, and that's one of the challenges is sometimes you don't get a signal and you just lose the tag. But if you had an antenna that was moving, that's what they do at Target and stuff, is they have the handheld one. So they're scanning, but they're also picking up other things as they move through the store.
Okay. And BBC reporting from CSQ in the audience. AI breakthrough could spark medical revolution. A program has been used to predict the structures of nearly every protein in the human body. That means they're talking about AlphaFold by that description, and indeed they are. And so now the BBC and the mainstream news is reporting on one of the biggest innovations in human history that every geek became familiar with, in December. I remember the day it came out, around December 11th. And holy shit, was that a day I will never forget. I remember the Starbucks I was sitting in when I read the headline. of the AlphaFold announcement, and now the BBC is reporting on it. 11 months, 10 months later. AI breakthrough that happened 11 months ago could spark medical revolution. Yes, that's right. We all understood that the day it was announced, around December 11th last year. BBC News, researchers used a program called AlphaFold to predict the structures of 350,000 proteins belonging to humans and other organisms. Yep, they did. Back in December 11th of last year, BBC. This happened 10 months ago. Why are you reporting on it now?
They need to show up at Tech News, some of these journalists.
Basically, the rule is, as my friend who runs H2O, the AI software company, said, if you live to the year 2030, you can live forever.
Okay, next up is Poppy found this one from The Guardian. A perfect storm. Supply chain crisis could blow world economy off course. Yes, it could. From Liverpool to LA, shortages of energy, labor, and transport are threatening recovery from COVID, is the sub-headline from The Guardian, and it says it was all going so well. Successful vaccination programs were driving the post-pandemic recovery of the global economy. Stock markets were back at record highs and prices were rising just enough to make deflation fears a thing of the past. But a supply crunch that initially put a question mark over the availability of luxury cars or whether there would be enough PlayStations under our Christmas trees is instead morphing into a full-blown crisis featuring a shortage of energy, labor, and transport from Liverpool to Los Angeles and from Qingdao to Queensland. All the problems are in one way or another tangled up in a surge of post-pandemic consumer demand, but taken together, they threaten what one leading economist calls a stagflationary wind that could blow the global economy off course. Mohammed El Arayan, an advisor to the insurance giant Allianz and president of Queen's College Cambridge, said this week's surprise fall in factory output in China was a clear warning that the world economy could slump while prices were still rising quickly, a doomsday double whammy that almost sank the UK in the 1970s. Here's the quote: "The supply chain problems are much more persistent than most policymakers expected, although companies are less surprised," he said. Governments are having to rethink quickly because the three elements, supply side, transport, and labor, are coming together to blow a stagflationary wind through the global economy. Energy shortages are providing us the starkest illustration of the problem, with increased number of petrol stations in the UK running out of fuel and cities in northern China having a ration power and force factories in the world's number one manufacturing nation to shutter just when pre-Christmas demand is reaching its peak in the West. Both countries have been caught out by not having enough reserves amid the scramble throughout the world for natural gas and for oil, which has almost doubled in price in 12 months to nearly $80 a barrel, along with the ongoing COVID-related restrictions in some large manufacturing countries such as Vietnam and well-documented shortage of components such as computer chips. Factories are simply not producing enough. In Japan, an index of stocks of finished goods has dropped to levels not even seen in the wake of the 2011 earthquake and tsunami disaster. But even if they could get their hands on more sources of energy and material, and factories could make more goods, it would still cost more to ship things. Drewry's shipping index, which measures the cost of containers, is up 291% compared with a year ago, and some busy routes, such as from China to Europe's biggest port, Rotterdam, the cost of shipping a container has risen sixfold in the past year. The problems don't end when the goods arrive at port, with labor shortages presenting a final problem in the increasing tortuous journey of products to their final destination. A lack of truck drivers in many parts of Europe, partly because of disputes over conditions and partly because of ongoing COVID restrictions, is causing delays. Flavio Romero Macau, a supply chain expert at Edith Cowan University in Western Australia, says the massive pent-up consumer demand in the wake of the pandemic has strained the world's delicately balanced economic ecosystem. Here's the quote: "Consumers are crazy to buy things because the world is awash with dollars from government stimulus, having higher savings and pent-up demand. PlayStations, laptops, phone, gym equipment, you name it. People are trying to buy it. Higher demand and restricted supply equals inflation. There's no way out of it. You put all these things together and it's a perfect storm."
Another global issue that excess money printing is at the root of, by the sound of it.
Large corporates and governments are reviewing their supply chains for crucial goods with a mind towards securing all supply as well as cost. We would expect to see supply chains in some sectors shorten as a response to COVID, either via reshoring or as companies try to diversify their sources of supply. Yep, that's right. The next one from timeout.com. Berlin could create the biggest car-free urban area in the world. There's a campaign to ban vehicles throughout Berlin, and it might actually happen. Maria, can you verify this? I know Paris is planning the same. Macron is very fond of making the Champs-Élysées a green zone, which would be very cool, actually.
That would be
That would
lovely.
be amazing. They could turn it into a
Hey,
park.
yeah, hey Tyler, I just want to mention, you mentioned this a few weeks back, or a couple of weeks about the gas shortage issue. I'm actually shocked that that was almost like a little blip in the news, and people aren't really talking about it, about natural gas shortage and winters coming literally, and all these supply chain jams that are happening. I mean, I'm very surprised how that's not like moving up in the news arena for us to be concerned. If you live in, I was in Houston. I mean, I lived in Houston, and when that freeze came, I mean, it knocked everything out. Rolling black, everybody was affected. It didn't matter which neighborhood you were in. And so if that happened with the supply chain as it was, I mean, this winter is going to be scary if it's a cold snap. Like, so I would.
Well, what would be interesting if we got that hack like we got on the East Coast there, buddy, in the winter. So
Oh,
let's
yeah.
cross our fingers
Oh, my
that
goodness.
doesn't happen.
Good point on that.
That's literally what I was thinking, Robert.
We did
And you know what? My oil shares will go up, and maybe I'll buy you guys drinks when we hang out.
we
They'll be
did
very cold.
we did just read a headline yesterday or 2 days ago that India is facing big energy outages. They've run out of coal. China as well is rationing energy. So you got both India and China struggling to get energy.
All right, everybody, be really bad. Santa will give us coal this year.
Some India's hoping that's the case. But it highlights the point that these grids that you grew up on that were dependent for most of our lives are becoming less dependable in all parts of the world. And that hopefully is
Well,
provoking people to take their own energy into their own hands.
what's interesting is just a couple of days ago, or this weekend, I believe, Reliance, which is a big company in India,
Yeah.
just like did a big buyout of a solar energy. So
Yes.
they're about to start cranking up here, which is a good thing to have. India also start to develop solar, so we have competition between India and China.
That's a good point. That was a headline that didn't get covered, but it probably should have, which was one of India's one of India's wealthiest individuals and companies just bought out one of the biggest solar companies out of China, I believe, and that could be amazing. That could be really amazing.
Yeah, I'll tweet it out and I guess tag
Well,
you. It's I think it was
I
like
think it's
770.
genius, totally genius, because America is intentionally not buying solar. We have a struggle with solar power panels at the moment because so much of it's made in China, and we have this block against China. But if India buys it, America can buy from India and whatnot. So that could be a really interesting move.
And the other piece to this, Tyler, is I think that the closer that these types of supply chain crises get to home or come to home, the more tangible the crisis really becomes for people. So, so hopefully, this shortage can inspire people to act in ways that otherwise they would not have because the problem was so far away or in some remote place or, happening to other people. So sometimes, unfortunately, things need to happen closer to home before they become real.
Well,
Just
we're really lucky in this room. There's a lot of problem solvers in this room right now. Maher, you're one of them. I can't applaud you enough for the work you're doing. Um, Eli, you got some big ideas down there. Just just the world, have faith. The good guys have the ball.
Yeah, Clubhouse has been like, dude. I mean, it's been phenomenal. I mean, for us to all come together, we had a room earlier with like Eli and I think gosh, Eli and Ethan and like a lot of folks in here as well about creating Tyler, you like this eco-industrial village networks, right? To create sustainable, like basically, start building stuff, right, and teaching people how to do that. And we're coming together. We got some plans to do that with, and it's pretty cool. By the way, Tyler, I tagged you in or Tech News on that Twitter. I'm starting to use Twitter. I haven't ever used it
Yeah.
before, really, but with the Reliance article
Okay.
about that purchase
Yep.
of solar.
Yeah, it was.
And and sorry, and I think Eli's kind of too humble, because give Eli 5 to 10 years, and we're going to be talking about solar panels that are building themselves, that don't require a ton of energy to make.
Ooh.
That's where the future wants to go.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, just 3 4 weeks ago, this is actually really big. They're using copper. They got to use copper inside of solar now. Increased efficiency, right?
Hmm.
Some, but the main thing is it's 100 times cheaper to use copper than it is to use the silver that's in there right
Yep.
now, and that was just a breakthrough that just happened.
Hmm. Okay.
So, going back to the subway story, I found the documentation on what they're releasing, and I replied to the tweet that you retweeted, Tyler,
Okay.
if anybody is curious.
Yes, we're curious. What is it?
Alginate particles, that's pretty innocuous, though. They're modified with fluorescent dyes or proteins. I haven't figured out what proteins yet. Let's see. Maltodextrin encapsulated DNA oligonucleotides, that's probably pretty safe. The thing that made me look for it, sulfur hexafluoride gas. It's commonly used as a tracer, but god damn it, it's a potent greenhouse gas. And what was the one other thing? DNA silica liquid mixture. Hold on, I have to verify that that's in their
They
table
want this.
here.
They want this as an inhalant, right? I mean, that's pretty much the premise here. Is they need this
It
inhaled,
Yeah,
travel.
and
They need
they're
an
well
inhaled, carried
below
by humans, and dispersed by humans.
they're well below the levels that would be considered an occupational hazard. So, then like a one-off exposure, I don't think that's anything to actually worry about. I'm just kind of pissed that they have to go and use a potent greenhouse gas.
It's the weight. It's the molecular weight, likely, right? It needs to be almost as close to neutrally buoyant as possible, so that we breathe it in, carry it, breathe it out.
So I'm actually not sure about it being neutrally buoyant, but sodium hexafluoride is used in transformers, and it is very safe to breathe.
Chiefly, it doesn't break down, and that's why it's not just a. That's why Eli's mentioning it's not just a potent greenhouse gas, but it's also one that doesn't break down like a number of other greenhouse gases. It kind of persists, which is why it's used for this tracing and tracking. Because if you want to measure the amount of particulates, then you need to be sure that it's not going to basically self-destruct.
Okay. Let's get back into these headlines here.
It's not neutrally buoyant. It's much heavier than air. It's got a molecular weight of over 200 compared to air's whatever. Nitrogen's 14, so it's going to be heavier than air, I think.
Okay.
So here we go. From Heyman, from CBC in Canada, a $1 device that detects
So with that, it likely won't be breathed in. Let's just leave that there.
with a $1 device developed in Canada that detects COVID-19 in sewers is drawing global interest. Developed at the Dalhousie University that can detect COVID in wastewater has been shipped across Canada and around the world to help detect COVID in sewer systems. And this could be very, very helpful in future pandemics of all kinds, of checking the sewers for trace amounts of viruses and bacteria and stuff. Could be very interesting. The next one from Ken via MSN. Cryptocurrency price check, Bitcoin rising. Got very close to 60,000 if you are about 10 hours ago. kind of back to its all-time high, getting very close back to its all-time high. But Bitcoin rising while White House voices ransomware concerns and miners exit China and whatnot. So will be interesting to see where it goes from here. Tomoko,
Did you guys hear? I remember Akash was telling us about the NFT. I need to check this out, but he said the numbers were like quarter one were like 1 billion in sales or something, and then quarter two were sub 2 billion, and then quarter three jumped up to $10 billion in NFT sales, and the whole entire market of like the art supply is $50 billion, right? I mean that's crazy growth. So I need to validate that, but that did come from a reputable investor here on Clubhouse, Akash, right? But when I heard those numbers, I was like, wow, that's it's incredible the shift that's going into the blockchain. And what I see also for coming is the reason I think Bitcoin is going to skyrocket is because that's the base layer. That's like the bank, if you will. And then now we have the Ethereum coming out, you got the DAOs coming out and Polygon, and everybody's going into smart contracts. I think it's going to be like my opinion is it's going to be a massive explosion. Like it's about to be on.
Let's not collate all this stuff together, though. And this is what people are doing. This is why they're investing in stupid shit. There's a lot of scams, there's a lot of bubbles. Bitcoin is not the same as Ethereum, and NFTs have got nothing to do with Bitcoin, really. So,
Oh yeah, I agree.
let's just not collate stuff together too much. That's exactly what the average brain is doing. It's creating strong associations between terms like the blockchain. Which blockchain? There's 10,000 of them. Which one do you mean?
No, what I'm saying,
Blockchains,
look, I agree with
NFTs,
that.
Bitcoin,
The
different
the
terms,
NFT,
very separate.
I don't invest in NFTs, by the way, because they're very insecure. But like the point that I'm making there is the migration of humans accepting the basically cryptocurrency is we're about to see a rapid escalation up, and it would be nice. I mean, I think that I understand what you're saying. Like Bitcoin's more secure. You got a lot of NFTs that are coming out that are like what shit coins as they call them, right? And I get that. I personally don't think that the security's up there yet. I mean, I talked to like Dr. Ahmed Ben Affa, which is like one of the top guys in there. Is like, I don't trust that stuff at all. And Jonathan's like, I don't trust that stuff at all. It could be all hacked, right? And so I don't, I think it needs a little bit more development. And I would definitely not encourage anybody to be putting in serious money into these NFT programs and kind of go with what works. I personally think it seems that Bitcoin is definitely the top choice, but it's the main point
I
is
guess my
there's
point is people don't understand what they're investing in. They don't understand the substrate underneath at all, and that's a little concerning. And yet they're investing significant amounts.
at all. They don't understand at all. Nobody. I mean, it's incredible how much money is coming into here and how much like I'm looking around at my friends and I'm like, you guys are just throwing money. You have no idea what's going on in there. You're just chunking stuff, right? And like with no understanding whatsoever. It's and unfortunately, what will happen is when you have a few more hacks and things like that, and it'll affect the industry in a negative way. And then the other interesting thing is, what about, are these securities or not securities? What's happening there with the SEC? And now they're starting to have groups that are coming out and, basically having accredited investors only
Yeah,
invest in
exactly.
things,
They're still kind of tying the knot on the whole ICO thing. When they start turning their attention to the next wave and the security aspect, it's going to be very interesting.
Okay, let's get back to it. Here we go.
Just quickly on this particular point, let's say like one or two more countries actually put that as a legal tender. Would that have an effect? Would that get attraction?
Yes, it would.
Would that change the
Oh,
Yes,
big
it would.
time. Big time, dude. It's already happening. And then
Especially
like,
if they start trading with each other in Bitcoin. Hold that thought. Next, hold on. We got to get back to these headlines here.
So Tyler,
Yes,
did you do the articles I sent you on J.P. Morgan and Bitcoin yet?
that he just poo-pooed it. Yeah.
Well, no, two things. One, he poo-pooed Bitcoin, but yet J.P. Morgan's coming up with its own digital asset, whatever you want to call it, coin.
Okay.
So they're going to have a digital. They're going to have their own stable
I
coin,
wonder if
only
those are related headlines. Yeah.
I wonder if those
right,
two.
only available for institutional investors. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, good luck.
The next one's from Tomoko in Japan, and it's from Nikkei Japan, so it's probably pretty accurate if it's covering Japan news from Japan's leading news source. And it says, the headline reads, Japan's new prime minister, Kishida, vows to strengthen the Quad alliance with India and the UK and the US and strengthen China ties. Leader also calls for redistributing wealth in a worker-friendly new capitalism. And there was an interesting quote. Hold on. Or was that Tomoko's quote? Or did he say what I think he said? One second. We'll continue strengthening act responsibly. Okay. That's it. Tweeting that one out. Next up is from Cheryl from Bloomberg. That which country? Yeah, this is too easy to do. Tech News Jeopardy. The Chinese beauty economy is poised to become the biggest in the world, with its growth dwarfing that of other nations. It could all come crumbling down, according to Bloomberg, where they're doing plastic surgeries on a scale the world has never seen before. And they have in fact, I did see the video in this article that's really worth watching. They've made these really simple apps that anyone can download and use, and they've been used hundreds of millions of times, where anyone can use this app. It shows your face in video in real time, and you can do an AR tweak of your face in the app and then get a quote of how much it would cost to tweak your face to look like that. And it can even recommend, hey, if you just did this, look how beautiful you are now if you fix your nose or your eyes or your cheeks or whatever. So you can see what you would look like and see the cost for it in your phone before you have the treatment. And this has led to an absolute phenomenal boom of treatments.
Yeah, I'm curious how that affects the kids too. At what age group is this? It's probably pushing these surgeries, down the age group as well. That's the scary part.
And in the interview, it highlights the point that many women believe they will receive a good return on their investment because they'll be able to attract a more wealthy husband. As you invest $1,000 in this plastic surgery, but you now can attract a higher caliber of husband. So this is like a very savvy investment, is one of the arguments that's made in the
Yeah, but
video.
I'd be pissed when the kids come out.
So
Hey Tyler,
shallow.
this is Antonia. This is kind of like my industry, and AR is one of the biggest trends right now in the world of beauty, and it's scary. It's so scary to the point where the industry has now made it legal, certainly legal here within the EU, for children under the age of 18 to have any type of surgery done. So if any sort of cosmetic surgeon is going to be administering any surgery, that is now going to be a legal offence, which is amazing, because the freehold, or just the ability to get hold of these AR apps, and for kids to be messing around with them and getting this kind of false economy of what's attractive and everything, not only messes with the mental health, which is a big thing happening within the beauty industry as well, mental health and people feeling ugly and all this kind of false looks that people do because of AR, and also yeah, it's just like this false vanity. It's sort of, this is a really, really huge trend. But what I wanted to make clear is that there are limits to what surgeons can do, certainly here in the EU. And as the EU, the standards of beauty and sort of the legal regulations here are very, very, very strict globally. So lots of people want to actually adhere to the laws here, and it normally, we're like the US, if we sneeze and the rest of the beauty world kind of catches up. So I really hope that whilst this is a booming industry over there, that they are taking the under 18s into consideration. This is Antonia.
Yeah, and in the beauty world, I mean, they also have these what's it called, vacations, right? You can go travel and get your surgery wherever. I mean, I'm in the beauty business too, Antonia. Me and my family kind of developed the eyelash extension industry with Extreme Lashes, and then so the crazy thing is the pageants, right? I mean, they go bananas in the pageants. And I mean, I have a 6-year-old daughter right now, and I see the apps they're playing with, and it's the age group is pushing down, lower and lower of this.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And now when you got AR coming in too, like not just like on your phone, but augmented reality with actual holograms, it's already here. It's just a matter of time. It's about to hit us, right? And so, I mean, maybe that could help, or you could like, hey, but, maybe you don't need the surgery. Just go ahead and like, you could skin, you could look at people and they'll just make them look prettier. We need those to offset the actual surgeries.
Yeah, because you've got Beauty app as well, which has been really popular, and that gives you, this kind of flawless magazine cover look. That's very popular. Lots of people use it, but I just would like to see that, there's more responsibility taken in the medical world. I guess the medical / aesthetic world, where these kind of surgeries are just not done under 18s. Keep it that way, and then we can have the games. We can build up our children to have good mental health and leave that to the adults. It's their choice if they want to do that and try to get a new husband and whatever. That's their choice. But I'm like, let's leave our young ones alone for now.
Okay.
I think that's such a commendable. Just real quick, Tyler. I'm just thinking back. So I grew up in Los Angeles, actually where Chris lives in Thousand Oaks, California, back in the day, and I had friends that were getting nose jobs and boob jobs, and for their 16th birthday. So I mean, and this was a bit ago. So I do agree with everything that has been said. I think it's going to be really hard to push it under 18 because it's already being done on teens, and it has been for quite some time. But I do believe that with the acceleration of AR, it's only going to push the age down further. So I think that it would need to come from the tech space as well as, the medical sphere to say, you know what, we need to put some parameters around how we introduce this new technology.
Okay. So the next one from Tomiko, that suicides among Swedish men decreased after Viagra became more affordable.
What a correlation. Files, Tyler, X Files.
Is
that because they're dying of other things?
Depression often leads to a drop in libido, but what about the reverse? How likely is the lack of sexual intimacy in life to cause depression? By the way, the Tomiko points out in this article, Sweden and Japan notably are two countries with high rates of male suicide, and also interesting kind of highly introverted cultures. And also, very interestingly, very low marriage rates at the moment.
I don't know about the Swedish suicide rate. I looked into this a long time ago because I had a debate with my American friends. And I just vaguely remember that Sweden was one step above or below the US. Mm-hmm. And at that time, the top country was Russia. So I'm not sure.
It says depression often leads to a drop in libido. But what about the reverse? How likely is the lack of sexual intimacy in life to cause depression? A recent study found a connection between the affordability of generic Viagra and suicide in men, hinting at a causal effect of the lack of sexual intimacy on the deterioration of mental health. In July 2013, the patent rights to Viagra ended in Sweden. 12 tablets of Viagra used to cost about $180. After the patent rights ended, that dropped to $45, a dramatic drop of 75% on the price of Viagra. The number of Swedish men using Viagra averaged 62,000 per year until 2012. That number increased to 100,000 for the years from 2014 to 2017. The study by Ralph Catalano used the monthly counts of suicide among Swedish men aged 50 to 59 and examined whether it changed after Viagra became more affordable. According to the resources, this age group was chosen because of two reasons. Number one, the age group saw the fastest increase in prescriptions for Viagra. And number two, historically, most number of suicides have been reported in this age group compared to any other. Data from 120 months from 2005 to 2014 indicate that in the months following the patent lapse, July 2013, the suicide count decreased. Researchers calculated that on average, 65 fewer suicides occurred each month after the drop in the price of Viagra. Statistical checks done by the researchers suggest the association could not arise from shared trends or seasonality, biased samples, or reversed causation. Our finding would appear by chance fewer than once in 10,000 experiments, they said. According to the researchers, the findings suggest that a healthy sexual life offers some protection against depression, besides fostering greater happiness, feelings of belonging, desirability, and self-worth, the satisfaction with life. Very interesting.
I wonder. I wonder if it's really about the sexual intimacy versus, I've got in the last few days, I've had several guests coming in from Canada and US and, different places, and they've come to Istanbul, and I've been taking them around, and it's just busy as hell here. I mean, all the tourists are here. It's just booming. At 1 o'clock last night in the morning, the people were just walking the streets, and there was actually a line for a few people waiting to get haircuts, and it was like 1:30 a.m. And they kept telling me over and over, how happy they are that they haven't had this kind of closeness or seeing people around each other, and even handshakes or a hug or something. And I'm wondering if it's really the actual act of, sexual intimacy, or just the human closeness. The people, versus the depression of just people needing to be around people and needing to be around, just kind of getting a hug sometimes, just being close to someone, and having that. And maybe it's, they're gauging it with, Viagra, as you're saying, and, is it really sexual intimacy that's what's missing, or just the human closeness of people, not necessarily related to, sex itself? Because I'm seeing here, they were saying that they were going into, you know, uh, different levels of a little bit of depression, because they've just been living in cities that has been very quiet and far. And the guy told me, he goes, I just was dying just to have our neighbor just one day look at us and say, hey, join us for breakfast. That tells you it's just, people have been separated from each other, and the intimacy, and we're, human beings need to be around each other and socialize and get close. And, I hugged someone, hello, and they were just like, my God, it's been such a long time since I hugged someone. And it's just, it's making you think that it's we're looking for, we need to have that human interaction, maybe not necessarily sexual intimacy, and why not that, if that also helps, and great, and of course, that's also important. But I'm wondering if that is only really the main thing, or it's just the bigger picture is that we've been separated from each other, and we need that human closeness, and people have become lonelier and more separated from each other than ever before, especially in the American culture, for instance.
Okay, next up. From Forbes, the International Monetary Fund chief, Kristalina Georgieva, will remain in her job following the China controversy. Georgieva was accused of manipulating China's ranking on the World Bank's now canceled Doing Business report in the 2018 edition. I think it was more than accusations. I think it was pretty conclusive. She's a little too friendly with China there at the IMF, but she's going to keep her position there. Next one from Poppy from BBC, and the headline reads, Silenced No More, a new era of tech whistleblowing. Frances Haugen's Facebook leaks and the new Silence No More Act may help others to come forward. Yep, that's what we said. That's what's going to happen. And then BB found this one from the BBC, and I think very clever BB to send articles from the BBC. And this one's interesting. DC Comics, the maker of Superman, DC Comics reveals that the latest Superman is bisexual. And Thailand, Poppy sends in the next one from the BBC, that Thailand to reopen for some
Sorry, regarding this Superman, I also saw a visual that the Superman is kissing another male character in that picture.
Yes.
So if that's the case, this Superman will be under parents' guidance, right?
He won't be allowed in China, that's for sure.
Right. How about in other parts of the world?
Probably not Russia. Almost certainly not Russia.
Yeah, I think it's PG in Singapore too.
So, Thailand to reopen for some vaccinated visitors on November 1st. The headline reads, Thailand to reopen fully vaccinated travelers from 10 nations, including the UK, will no longer need to quarantine to come back to Thailand. starting November 1st. And then Poppy found this one.
Time to visit Tyler.
Yep. Poppy found this one from the Washington Post. About Blue Origin. Employees say toxic, dysfunctional bro culture led to mistrust, low morale, and delays at Jeff Bezos' space venture, leading, said one former top executive of conditions prompting many to leave the company.
They're doing an open house here on the 18th and 19th in LA, and they're advertising it on Facebook, and the people on Facebook are just roasting them so bad.
The next one, also from the Washington Post, says that the Twitch hack revealed much more than just the streamer salaries. Here are 4 new takeaways. For starters, many of the listed top streamers make less than minimum wage. This is number 1. Number 2, only 3% of Twitch's highest paid streamers are women. Number 4, real numbers change the game. I'm not sure what that means. And number 4, it's impossible to say what happens next. Okay. And the next one.
Does anybody, sorry, Tyler, sorry to interrupt. Does anybody have a sense of the average age of the Twitch streamers?
Good question.
Just to get an idea.
Very good question. Let's see if that last article mentions age.
I think it's.
Let's see if we can ping in our own favorite.
Oh yeah, Swedbliss. Let's ping in Swedbliss, and I want to know not only how old are the streamers, I want to know how many of the top earners are beautiful, because I believe they are discriminating against ugly people like myself.
So the age ranges between probably like 21 to 40. Doesn't go beyond that.
Okay. I just pinged Swedbliss, so if somebody sees her pop in, then we can circle back to this one.
I mailed her as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't see it mentioned in this article. Okay, so the next article is from Poppy, from CNBC, that top Facebook digital currency engineers are departing to join Andreessen Horowitz crypto fund. 2 of Facebook's leads in the Novi digital wallet division left the company to join Andreessen Horowitz's growing crypto team. And from CSQ, Tesla wins court case against Chinese owner who falsely claimed sudden vehicle problems. Tesla won a lawsuit against the Chinese owner of a Model 3 who spread false information about the incidents for over a year. Who falsely claimed sudden vehicle acceleration and was screaming, "No brakes, no brakes." Sounds like this was the lady who jumped on top of the car in the middle of the Shanghai Auto Show and screamed, "No brakes, no brakes," in front of all of the press. And Tesla's response that this was not accurate because they have the data, and people often forget Tesla's got all the data on what happens in the car, and Tesla's made some statement denying the charge of no brakes, and that was responded to by Chinese media saying that Tesla is being very rude in their response. And Tesla's had not the smoothest sailing in China ever since, but they have just won the lawsuit. Tesla won a lawsuit against the Chinese owner of a Model 3 who spread false information about the incident for over a year. The owner claimed that he drove into a parking lot at high speed, crashed into many cars, and was seriously injured by his car, which suddenly began to accelerate, and the brakes did not respond to the pressing. Now, the owner is sentenced to pay 50,000 Chinese yuan and ordered to apologize to Tesla. In August 2020, loud news about Tesla came from China. It was reported that Model 3 suddenly accelerated and it did not slow down when the driver applied the brakes, causing the vehicle to enter a parking lot at high speed, crash into several vehicles, crash into the sidewalk from the other side of the parking lot, crash into a lamppost, and cause serious injury to its owner. Mr. Chen revealed that on August 12th at around 11 p.m., in Wenzhou. He was driving along the road from the residential area where he was undergoing some sort of repair. Despite the repair work, he drove at 60 miles per hour, Mr. Chen said on Chinese radio. Where here's his quote: "I drove 5 or 6 kilometers at that speed of 60 miles per hour. When I got to about 100 meters away from the parking lot, the car suddenly accelerated. I stepped on the brake, but it was useless. After that, the car got out of control and flew into the parking lot." Although already at the time this story caused a number of doubts that the driver's story was true, and some facts point to his lies, a number of media outlets around the world took up the story and wrote negative articles about Tesla and the unreliability of its cars. Throughout the time since the accident, Mr. Chen also spread false information about the incident and the danger that Tesla cars pose. In May 2021, Twitter user reported that after a thorough investigation of the incident, the Wenzhou Auto Engineering Society concluded that the accelerator pedal remained pressed and the brakes were not applied. Based on the data from Tesla, you never hit the brakes, sir, and you accelerated the car. Somebody pushed that pedal down and you were in the driver's seat. We have the data. Perhaps you didn't realize you were driving a computer, and we can see exactly what you're doing, and what you say doesn't matter. The data shows what you did. And people tend to forget these things about Teslas.
And unlike the accelerator, the brakes on a Tesla are still connected mechanically. It makes that story difficult to believe from the start, because you'd have to have a full brake system failure for him to slam the brakes and it not stop the car. A car can't just ignore you pushing the brake. It can ignore you pushing the accelerator. It's just a electronic link. Excuse me.
Thus, it was proved that the driver is fully responsible for the accident. However, the driver continued to blame the failure on his Tesla, saying it caused the accident and spreading all kinds of unfounded claims. This prompted Tesla's legal department in China to file a lawsuit against the owner as part of their fight against the spread of false information about the company's cars, which seriously harms the brand. Today, the person from the Twitter account reported that Tesla won this case in court at the end of September. For deliberately distorting the truth about the accident, the owner was forced to pay 50,000 renminbi and must apologize to the plaintiff within 10 days and publish a public apology on social media within 90 days. The court also ordered him to submit an apology statement to the court for review and approval before posting it on Chinese social media.
Hey, Tyler,
Yeah.
on this whole thing, I remember like 4 or 5 months ago, one of the things that we do here is, get past the noise and get to some signals,
Yep.
right? And I think we picked up some signals based on the discussion here and some headlines that once the CCP effectively get to a point where they think their own industry or their own EV industry is kind of ready to go on its own, in a sense. They kind of, the usefulness of the player that came in to catalyze the industry, in this case Tesla, technology and consumer, tends to, they're kind of their usefulness is done. And so I've been working with that thesis just because I fortuitously had some Tesla stocks. So I took some off the table about 4 months ago. If you remember, we discussed it briefly. Which is, generally speaking, okay, but I'm still on that thesis. I don't think this specific headline changes that, right? Because I just saw I saw something flashing. I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, but something on Everglades, the property company, one of their divisions kind of promoting their EVs, which is all part of the CCP's overall control of a few companies that drive their 5-year plan or their 10-year plan, right? So I don't know if this changes. It's useful face saving and just getting to the facts again for Tesla, but I don't know what it does. I just question mark what it does in terms of the thesis for Tesla in China. I don't know.
It's worth pointing out that the penalty for this person who inflicted potentially billions of dollars of damage to Tesla in China is paying an incredibly eye-watering $7,000 fine and an apology.
Yeah, that's
Russia
huge.
level fines.
This is clearly justice served. Yeah.
It's all over for him now, Tyler. Strike another match.
I think Tesla is like,
it's all over now, baby blue.
I'm sure Tesla is like, we're all good now. It was just a few $1 billion worth of sales that you heard, and we'll take that $7,000 and put it back into, boosting our efforts in China.
Bitcoin or
The
Dogecoin.
golden
Yeah.
days of holding a grudge are over.
So the next one is from Evan from KTLA, which I have incredibly strong ties to, actually, in Los Angeles. And KTLA reporting that this high-tech baby monitor tracks your baby's breathing as they sleep. That could be very cool if you're worried about your child not breathing while they sleep. So baby monitors getting a little more accurate now that they can apply additional algorithms to the video that's processed in real time. The next one is from Evan from CNBC. Oh, I just had a thought. Is it possible that these baby monitors that came out, 10 years ago and became quite popular, those are relatively brand new phenomena in parenting and still only used in, specific parts of the world. Now follow this through with me. Is it potentially the case that by using said baby monitors, it gives parents at an early stage in their child's life the sense of wanting to control and monitor and take extra precautions that parents in the rest of the world have never considered to do, and has led them to
It's
be
not that new though, right, Tyler? I mean, we have them. We had them when in the '90s. There's
okay,
the
20 years.
walkie-talkie looking
Sure
things,
enough.
right?
Well, those were audio based, yeah. So my point is that is it not the case that the same places where these have become popular are the same places where parents might be a little parenting has gone a little awry, and perhaps that it's somehow related to this ability to know where your kids are at all the time. And the point I'm making is in the 70s or in early 80s, there were no phones. So when you as a child went with your friends to the supermarket by yourselves on your bikes, the parents didn't know when you were coming home. And they didn't try to pretend like they could know when you were coming home. And there was the child developed a lot more autonomy and self-responsibility. And perhaps the children who grew up under these baby monitors now feel like they didn't need to develop their own responsibility and autonomy because the technology is responsible for my well-being.
Let's peel it back. Let's go here because do you think it's the technology or do you think it's the prevalence of weirdos, or maybe there wasn't an increase in actual weirdos but the knowledge of them? Because me, you, Lakeisha, I guarantee you we all walked to school.
Correct.
you know
Me too.
we
Yep. Yep.
from age 4. you know uh
And many parts of the world,
Latchkey, free range.
yeah,
Latchkey kid,
yeah,
but we didn't have the same knowledge of the weirdos that you now are afraid of now, where someone's going to come grab a kid and disappear, and that's what I'm the most
which is
afraid of.
peculiar because the ability to catch those kid snappers is 1,000 times better now than it was back then.
I
And actually,
agree.
if
Even the snapper's gone up.
but if you look at the data, if you look at the actual data of like the kid snappers, it's predominantly just like family members. Like how many kids, like all kids are afraid of getting kidnapped, and it's all about kidnapped and stuff like that. There's many more things statistically if you look at the data of what will damage the kids. But I do agree with you that it's like kids need to be kids and be I used to go out and ride my bike all over the place and go fishing in the bayou and like all types of fun stuff. Right? Kids don't go outside as much, but it also creates this monitoring thing creates this kind of like split personality is what I've seen in some kids where they have to like now manage a persona with the parents and
Right.
then have the offline like totally different world with their friends because they don't want them coming into their world, right? So
So I don't have
right.
the data around this, but I also think that critical thinking skills come along with, just having a degree of freedom. And so when I think about like these TikTok challenges with kids doing really asinine things, they probably haven't had a lot of latitude to make simple choices. Like if I, let's say, walk along the railroad track bridge, I might fall into the lake or the river. I mean, so I think that with autonomy comes, increasing degrees of responsibility. And then I could extrapolate that ultimately, hopefully, it would lead to better decision making down the road because people will have practiced making decisions along the way.
You know
I
what's
think
scary
judgment.
is really scary is what's coming now with the metaverse, right? And you have all these you can have different metaverses, and in the augmented reality and virtual reality world, imagine now you got Facebook, you got TikTok. I mean, how many of us are like, what the heck? How many accounts you got to manage? Now these kids are going to be managing entire personas in different metaverses. Like it's going to create all these little split personalities. And my personal preference with my child is keep that stuff away from her until she's as old as possible. That's going to be my decision, to let her kind of form her own personality and go out into the world and engage with it, and use technology as a tool to amplify her intelligence, not to just be a babysitter or just entertainment nonstop. But and then you got anonymity. Like right now, our kids, we could kind of see their screens, right? We could see what they're looking at. But when the augmented reality world is here and it's upon us, we're not going to see what they're seeing, right? And they're going to be in these different arenas, and we're going to have no clue what they're doing and who they're talking to, because they're interacting with holograms that we don't see. And that's coming, and that's the split personalities of personas in different metaverses is going to be something completely in three dimensions too. And then they're managing their avatar and their look. Like we're already talking about beauty here, right? Now they're going to have to manage their three-dimensional holographic look, and how much money is it going to cost in this metaverse or that one, and arguments parents are going to have with their kids if they're going to let them have some money to get this NFT bracelet or this new hair braids or something like that. And it's coming really fast. Maher Dawdi
Yeah, it's
Dusty.
got to be about judgment, though, Mayor. So I see your point around protection and how you feel those instincts, because I think you said earlier I don't know how old your child is, but if you're going to feel that protection and you want to do that. But one thing that I've learned is um, it's if you I think, to Tyler's point, I think the more protection you give, the more you take away. They don't have the muscle, right? They don't have the muscle to make those choices if they end up somewhere. So the key thing is trying to build that muscle, and I don't think it's easy, because sometimes you worry that muscle, because you can only get it wrong once, right? So if you're walking down the street and somebody attacks you, you can have an emotional scar for the rest of your life. So you as a parent, certainly me as a parent, I've been, you feel like, oh, let me protect, let me put all the things, and the technology's there, the tracking's there, the ability to pick them up and drop them, and things like that, become more available. But the challenge also, the paradox of this is that you just can't do it. They have to have the judgment at some point. And how do they build that judgment? And then that, coupled with the other fact that their brains biologically, the head teacher in my son's school just shared this at an event. Got some scientists in from Oxford and others. Just your brain's not developed. I mean, it's developing to assess risk at the level that adults do. So the question is, what do you do? And so there's a mixture of things. I think a lot of conversation about the stuff and immersing them in it, but having conversations about it. So, we introduce a lot of the technology just early, just like this is going on. Thank goodness for rooms like this where you actually see things coming ahead of time, and you can have those discussions. But yeah, it's not. I don't. It's like the hardest thing to do, being a parent.
It is, and my personal decision is like, honestly, I don't, I'm not afraid of them outside, like, because I look at the stats. I want my kids going outside and exploring, and I'm not afraid of my like 9-year-old son, or maybe my daughter. I'm different. I'm a daddy, right? But like with my son, for sure, like, go outside, dude, go play outside, and I'm really not afraid. I'm not afraid of them getting picked up, and because I make decisions based on data, right? And I want them outside engaging in the world. But this technology aspect of immersive worlds, the way I view that is like, imagine taking a 14-year-old that doesn't know how to dive, right, or swim, and throwing them into the ocean with higher seas and expecting them to go ahead and swim, right? So that immersive technology of people and characters and others coming in, especially in like in the digital world, everybody puts on a totally different. The inhibitions go away, right? But in the real world, you still have normal interactions and normal people have the boundaries completely change in the metaverse stuff. And so my personal decision has been, okay, I want to limit her exposure. And like, I went into her iPad, lock it up, and the way I deal with it is just make it, okay, it's all going to be educational apps, and it's, I like, Minecraft is cool, go build stuff, right? And go look up at the sky and see the stars and things. Those things are cool. I think if we like create an environment in which you lock away the bad stuff, but they have choices in there, then that's a good, that's what I do, at least.
And so this sounds weird, but you know how I do it with my 3 kids that are under 4 is we limit the on-demand programming as much as possible. And if they want programming, we serve it over the air, meaning PBS or whatever. Not just for the content, but because they have to wait for it and they don't have any choice as to what they can see. And I believe that teaching them a little bit of, you have to deal with what you got, you have to wait for the commercial, because when the commercials come on PBS, they're like, hey, have fast forward. And I'm like, that's not how it works. These are commercials, kids. Like, this is how me and your mom had to deal with it. And so I know that doesn't seem like it makes much sense, but it's really suppressing that dopamine that happens when you get what you want. And specifically also what happens when you don't get what you want. And so by teaching the kids how to modulate and deal with disappointment, I think that's our biggest tool going forward, because we don't live in we didn't grow up in the same world as they do. They can order stuff and it shows up like, the same day. Like we didn't have that ability growing up, and we had to wait for things, and that taught us patience. It taught us how to be bored, and kids don't know how to be bored these days.
Oh, that's a
So I'll
great
get off my
that's a great
soapbox
point.
now.
But Chris, just one point on this particular thing. Like, okay, just imagine that you are just worried about your kids that not having a good handwriting. I mean, who cares if they're not going to have like a good handwriting, because they're going to be always on the keyboard. And forget about the keyboard. Now it's not about the keyboard. It's about the actual giving a command to Alexa that execute this thing or that thing. This mentality that, they're going to be living in our world actually suppresses them too. And I've actually gone through for 5-6 years, exactly what Mahar said. This is what the mentality I had with my kids. And, like the older one is actually in the third year now, and doing a computer science. And, like past 5 years, he was just playing, he was the actual pro on the League of Legends. And I was like after him, like, dude, come on, you have to actually come out and play outside and, go football or like soccer or something like that. Just go outside. But he is on the college team now with the League of Legends. And he's just doing just so amazing that these like guys, like even the teachers were like this, oh my God, you're so good at it. And, taking the college to the next level where he's actually competing in the League of Legends on the actual tournament. The whole of the US is going to actually have the tournament on the League of Legends. When they grow up in 2015 to 20 years time, the world is going to be very different. It's going to be the metaverse. It's not going to be the real world we are talking about. And we are actually imposing our worldview on them by restricting themselves not to go and spend more time in the metaverse. So I think we have to actually look at it from that point of view. When they grow up, when they're going to be in the practical field, when they're going to be doing their jobs, it's going to be an entirely different world. And we have to see it from that point of view. So stop worrying about their handwriting right now and their skills that they're going to be jumping into the actual water and no one
I
won't be able to actually
agree.
swim.
I agree. I agree.
Okay, here we go.
All of
Nalormi,
sorry, go on.
Carl, you want to jump in with the final word there?
I'll make it really quick. All of this is about speed. Almost everything that we talk about can be simplified down to the speed aspect. Is is what really makes it matter. As in, there's nothing particularly wrong with the way that the world is changing. It's the fact that it's changing at such a rate that there's a disconnect between the previous generation and the current generation. That is that the role of a parent has always been that to be able to pass the world, get as much information in the world as possible through their experience, normally localized geographically as well, and then impart that onto the child to give them a head start, and then leave them to figure out the rest on their own. But the point is now that by the time that moment happens, nothing really that the parent has experienced is relevant anymore. Now, we've just had a couple of speakers saying, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. The next 5 months, what 10 years? Really? No, the next 5 months. And a lot of what you just know and what you could pass on is no longer relevant. And it's that when you have that situation where that disconnect has happened, people can't keep up and they feel like they can't keep up. That imparts a sense of lack of control about their environment, and that cycles back around to, Tyler, what you were saying, which is where parents are increasing the level of pseudo control, which is having sensor mats for babies and having Apple tags on their children's bags and that kind of thing. It's because the Western society specifically, it's just that increasing feeling of lack of control because you don't recognize what the world is. No, you can't do what every aspect of your parental genealogy is telling you to do, which is try and prepare your children for the world. Well, you fundamentally can't, because the changes that are happening aren't necessarily good or bad. They're just happening at a rate where a human can't keep up. And this actually ties all the way back around to when we were talking earlier about Apple and the tracking and everything else. It's the fact that by the time as an individual you learn to figure out, as a standard person, not as a geek, but as a standard person, by the time you figure out how to look after yourself digitally and how to look out for certain things, and they're now doing this in privacy policies and this in terms and conditions, by the time you figure that out, it's actually no longer relevant. And law and policy, when it's looking at Facebook, for instance, how do we make sure that Facebook doesn't gain too much power? Well, it doesn't really matter, because by the time that law figures it out, Facebook has already moved on. So it's always speed. It's like the essence of the changes in society aren't inherently bad or good. It's just moving at a pace. We've kind of got to that almost singularity point where an individual and policymakers and parents can't actually keep up with the shift of change. And then that puts a bad spin on everything and makes everybody feel like they're spinning out of control. And then you have pictures of Karens, you have videos on trending videos of Karen markets freaking out, and you're wondering, how did that person get to that point? Well, it's 1,000 different paper cuts that have happened to her over the past 6 months that have made her just want to control that one situation. Yeah, just my thoughts on this. It's speed. It's the speed of everything.
Here we go. We've got 10 articles in 5 minutes. So the first one's from Nalormi from Sky News, that a geomagnetic storm warning as solar flares expected to hit directly on Earth today. An alert was published by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which warned the geomagnetic storm could cause power grid outages, which would be right in line with Mercury retrograde. And boy, astrology and astronomy have never been so close before. Watch out for the solar flares that could take down the communication networks. The next one's from Poppy from Eli.
Quick aside. Yeah. So the one like extension or function stack onto the space-based solar sunshade I've been talking about is to mitigate solar flares like that.
The next one from Wired. How much will it cost to prevent deaths by climate-driven heat? A new formula measures what's called the mortality cost of carbon, and how much would have to be removed from the atmosphere to save a single life. Great question. Which this article doesn't provide any charts or graphs. I have to dig through the text. But Poppy found another article that did do the math. And I imagine this article must give an answer. The new paper published today in Nature Communications estimates that we would have to prevent 4,434 metric tons of carbon dioxide from being released into the atmosphere to save one life. That amount equals the lifetime carbon emissions produced by 3.5 Americans. A graduate student in sustainable development at Columbia And the study's author estimates that 74 million lives will be saved globally from heat-related deaths if the world's economies could decarbonize by 2050. There's a significant number of lives that can be saved by reducing emissions at the scale of individuals, at the scale of companies, at the scale of nations, and globally.
And that's about as many people as died in World War II.
And the cost in terms of dollars is $37 per ton. And so the $37 times 4,434 times $37 is $164,000. There you go. So if you wanted to carbon offset enough carbon to save a human life, you can spend $137,000 on carbon credits.
Unfortunately, it takes a lot less to save a life through public health interventions, and we don't do that in a lot of the world.
So Evan found an article from CNBC, which is a perfect opportunity to play our favorite new show, Tech News Jeopardy. What are the 10 fastest growing science and technology jobs for the next decade, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics? Let's go with number one. What's the number one fastest growing science and technology job?
Nuclear.
Cybersecurity.
Data scientist.
Wind turbine.
Industrial automation.
AI.
Social media moderators.
Gamer. Athlete.
Cheryl wins with data scientist. That was number 3.
Yeah.
Number 1 was, well, let's go in reverse order. Number 10, forensic science technicians. Number 9, medical scientists. Number 8, computer and information research scientists. Number 7, software developers. Number 6, actuaries. Number 5, operations research analysts. Number 4, epidemiologists. Number 3, as Cheryl said, data scientists. Number 2, information security analysts. Although, did somebody say cybersecurity?
Yep,
I believe
said
so.
it.
Give
Yeah.
yourself a point.
Yeah.
Number 1, statisticians.
What? Interesting.
Oh, I love that. Statisticians. Perfect.
Isn't that just the data scientists' old school name?
Yeah, that's where they came out of, yeah.
So the article that is displaying statistics about something is claiming that statisticians are going to be the most.
With
I claim bias.
The fox guarding the hen house here. So Evan also found this one from the Wall Street Journal, that Elon Musk versus Charlie Ergen, battle of the billionaires over spectrum. The two moguls want rules to favor their visions for high-speed broadband service. Is there space enough for the two of them, as they have locked horns over bandwidth spectrum? And the next one from Wall Street Journal says, the Afghanistan interpreter who helped rescue Joe Biden in 2008 from a snowy Afghanistan valley has escaped the country. Here's how he got out. After a personal plea to the U.S. president, weeks in hiding, and a clandestine evacuation, Aman Khalili and his family crossed the border into Pakistan. Following a series of demoralizing setbacks and frustrating dead ends over the past 6 weeks, U.S. veterans worked with former Afghan soldiers and well-placed Pakistani allies to carry out a clandestine operation to drive Mr. Khalili and his family more than 600 miles across Afghanistan to get them to Pakistan, according to those involved in the effort. Aman helped keep me and other Americans safe while we were fighting in Afghanistan, and we wanted to return the favor, said Brian Genty, the combat veteran and Purple Heart recipient with the Arizona National Guard who worked with Mr. Khalili in Afghanistan. He is a blessing, he says. We will get you out, White House sends message to Afghan interpreter. In 2018, Mr. Khalili was part of a rescue team sent to help Mr. Biden. Then the Democratic senator from Delaware and fellow senators John Kerry, Chuck Hagel, Jesus, if you're saving 3 U.S. high-ranking U.S. senators, yeah, you better get out. 2 helicopters transporting them had been forced by the blinding snowstorm to land in an Afghan valley vulnerable to Taliban attack after Mr. Khalili's story appeared in the Wall Street Journal on August 31st, in which he was identified for safety reasons by his official first name, Mohammed. U.S. veterans helping him were inundated with offers to aid in the evacuation. White House press secretary said the government would get him out. The main drivers of the mission to save Mr. Khalili, his wife, and 5 children were U.S. military veterans from Arizona who worked with the interpreter in 2008. Although an array of high-profile people and U.S. officials said they would try to help evacuate him, it was a group led by Afghan American who worked as linguists with elite U.S. forces in Afghanistan who carried out the ground operation that got Mr. Khalili safely out of the country. After 144 hours of driving day and night and getting through so many checkpoints, my family was so scared. But right now, this is kind of heaven, he told the journal. Hell was in Afghanistan. As the last American forces flew out of Afghanistan, Mr. Khalili spoke to the journal and made a direct appeal to Mr. Biden for help. Hello, Mr. President. Save me and my family. Don't forget me here. Today is the day we were all hoping to get good news, Mr. Khalili wrote on WhatsApp. Okay. The next one is from CSQ, sends this one in, that Germany unveils first self-driving train. German rail operator Deutsche Bahn and industrial group Siemens on Monday unveiled the world's first automated driverless train in the city of Hamburg. The train offers a more reliable service without having to lay a single kilometer of new track. How you like that, train operators? It's more reliable than your dumbass human capabilities, according to the headline. It's more reliable, meaning it doesn't call in sick, go on strike, try to form a union, all that shenanigans. A little more reliable.
I mean, up here in LA, there like 100 and some odd people died because a guy was on his cell phone and missed the stop.
How's that going to go down when all the autonomous trucks and cars and vehicles and warehouse robots are branded as more reliable? They're going to come with pitchforks. The Willie sends in this one, that a company called M Pharma, letter M Pharma, a telehealth pioneer in Ghana, gets physical with 100 virtual centers across Africa. So a telehealth pioneer putting in physical stores. Yeah, makes sense. Evan sends in this one from The Economist, that credit card firms like MasterCard are becoming reluctant regulators of the web. From sex to free speech, what goes online is increasingly up to the financial companies. And it was revealed yesterday from Johan, who joins us regularly, that MasterCard essentially, when you start using MasterCard as a website, as part of their package, it essentially forces the website to include metadata that flags bad acting websites as having, what were the words? This is really interesting. Give me 2 seconds to pull this up from Johan. Here it is.
Yeah, if you look in the direct message from me
I
on
got it.
Twitter, you will have
The
the
webmaster
most
also noted that the
detailed result.
form that they embedded, because you collect the credit card information in a form, right? The website makes a form for you to enter your details for your credit card. That form essentially forces all adult sites to add the words underage material, prostitution or trafficking, weapons, drugs, and other metadata, which then puts them at risk of AI shadow bans and even state surveillance.
Since I've been working with card payments for quite a while, this was quite a news for me, at least.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The next one from Evan. The Economist, new ways to make food are coming, but will consumers bite? Consumers and governments should embrace new ways to make food. How about them crickets? Get a really nice balsamic sauce on them crickets. We have a whole life of very delicious crickets in our near future. And worms.
Are you talking about the weaponized crickets that they were sending against
No,
the
I'm talking
American
about the
diplomats?
inevitable change to insect protein in our near future.
Yeah.
Another reason why vegetarian and veganism is the way to go.
The Heyman sends in the next one from the Wall Street Journal. Just your daily reminder that the Colorado River is in crisis. The Walton family is pushing a solution. The first ever official shortage on the Colorado River has intensified a debate over how to provide water to just a few 40 million people across just this part of the world called Southwest America. This place called California is not going to have water.
Heard
You
about
heard
that
about this
place.
place called California? It's just like the 6th largest economy of the world, and they're not going to have this thing. Apparently, some people like this stuff called water. Well, apparently, this place called California is not going to have any.
Well, the solution, Tyler, is going to be all the Californians are moving to Texas, so there'll be a smaller population and less water use.
Okay, Texas itself has a bit of water problems, unfortunately. The next one, Kuala Lumpur, the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation is developing a startup development roadmap. They want in on this tech game. Where's my cash register? With the target of creating 5,000 startups, including 5 unicorns by 2025. No, sir, that's not how it works. You're not going to create 5 unicorns by 20.
They're setting a target of
Yes.
unicorns.
5,000 companies,
Wow.
but they got their math right on that it's about 1 out of 1,000 that could potentially become unicorns. So somebody consulted them correctly on that. But to make a unicorn now in 4 years, that's a bit ambitious, sir. So, not impossible, but very ambitious. But that's interesting. And then the last headline is India gets the last laugh today from the Hindustan Times. That today India is the 3rd largest startup ecosystem globally by a number of startups, with more than 15,000 startups opening shop in 2020. 3 times more than Malaysia was hoping to do. And up from 5,000 in 2010. So 3x in the past 10 years. And more importantly, by 2025, India expects to have 200 unicorns, which they are likely to do. They're on track to have 50 this year alone. And if they keep that pace, they will be at 200 by 2025. There you go. Congratulations, India. Thank you, everybody. 10 minutes over, but we will meet again in 5 hours. And I hope you do join us. Good to see you, Cal.